Chapter 344. Lin Yuan had now completely emptied the spirit pool. At this moment, only Blackie, the spirit-gather goldfish, was swimming freely in the spirit pool. When Lin Yuan saw Blackie's joyful expression, he felt a slight headache. Although Blackie, the spirit-gather goldfish, was considered an animal, its IQ was not much lower than that of the jasmine lily. Blackie might look like it understood humans, but it had a silly and cheerful personality. In fact, he was just a silly and cheerful person who seemed to understand everything. In fact, he only knew how to spit bubbles in the spirit pool when he had nothing to do. This was like a student who didn't know anything, but when the teacher was lecturing, he would nod, ponder, and interact with the teacher with an expression of sudden enlightenment. In fact, in his mind, he was thinking about something as simple as eating potato chips and drinking cola on a big bed. This made Lin Yuan overestimate Blackie's intelligence. Previously, Lin Yuan had always thought that there was something between Blackie and the female 5 fortune ranchu. But then, he suddenly recalled that his spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, was also a female fish. Later, Lin Yuan realized that Blackie did not have any other feelings for the female 5 fortune ranchu. However, the size of the female 5 fortune ranchu was about the same as the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie. The spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, treated the female 5 fortune ranchu as its playmate. At that moment, Lin Yuan issued an order to Blackie. Then, he threw the Black Legend Dragon's mouth orchid flower into the spirit pool. This was the moment when Blackie stimulated its dragon species bloodline transformation for the second time. Fish fays were not smart. Even high-grade fish fays were not very smart as long as they did not become myth breeds. This was also why there was a saying that fish only had 7 seconds of memory. However, if Blackie could evolve into a dragon species fay, its intelligence would increase by a level. When it became a dragon species fay, its intelligence would increase by a level. Blackie followed Lin Yuan's order and swam toward the legend dragon's mouth orchid flower. Just as Blackie swallowed the legend dragon's mouth orchid flower, Lin Yuan could feel the dragon species pressure in Blackie's body. Lin Yuan could feel Blackie's dragon species pressure, which had been accumulating power and waiting to be unleashed, erupting in an instant. Although Xiao Hei was already a spirit-gather goldfish, it still had the appearance of a spirit siphon goldfish. However, the moment the dragon's might erupted, the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, immediately sank to the bottom of the spirit pool under the intense pain. Then, the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, began to churn at the bottom of the spirit pool. He kept slamming his body against the walls of the spirit pool. The spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, hit the wall of the spiritual pool with great force. The spirit-gather goldfish Blackie's black scales were considered hard. It didn't suffer much damage when it hit the wall of the spirit pool for the first few times. However, under the unbearable pain, the spirit-gather goldfish slammed into the spirit pool's wall again and again. Slowly, the black scales on Blackie's body loosened. Even the fins and tail of the fish had been battered by the crazy collisions. Many parts of the spirit-gather goldfish, Xiao Hei's fins and tail were already broken. Through this opening, Lin Yuan could even see the golden metal disc filled with energy ores and the deep-sea butterfly shell flowers at the bottom of the spirit pool. Although Blackie didn't have high intelligence, a contractor and Fei could sense each other's feelings and thoughts. Just like now, Lin Yuan could completely feel the pain that came from the depths of Blackie's soul. It was a process where all the cells in the body were destroyed and reborn under the stimulation of the bloodline. Lin Yuan naturally felt heartache for Blackie's pain. However, Lin Yuan also knew that it was useless for him to feel heartache. It couldn't reduce a trace of the pain that Blackie had to endure. The edge of a treasured sword was sharpened, and the fragrance of plum blossoms was gone. If a person wanted to learn knowledge and become the best person, they would need to work hard for thousands of days and nights. Moreover, Blackie's racial bloodline had undergone a qualitative transformation. The scarlet blood in Blackie's body flowed into the spirit pool from the broken scales. It was immediately broken down into spirit chi by the spirit pool and injected into the spirit lock spatial zone. Had it not been for Blackie's bulging eyes that were not damaged, Lin Yuan would never have recognized that this bloody fish fay in the spirit pool was actually Blackie. No matter what, Lin Yuan would never have recognized that this bloody fish Fey in the spirit pool was actually Blackie. The spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, no longer had any scales on its body. It was using its softest flesh to hit the walls of the spirit pool. The mangled spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, was still crazily hitting the spirit pool's wall to vent the intense pain that was surging all over its body. Each hit would definitely bring up a handful of captivating red blood. Lin Yuan quietly accompanied Blackie by the spirit pool and walked the most difficult path of a fish's life. For Blackie, the legendary dragon's mouth orchid would have been a great blessing if it had not been discovered by chance in the depths of the endless forest. Since it was a blessing, it had to endure no matter how hard it was. It was said that a golden unicorn was not a fish in a pond and would transform into a dragon when encountering a storm. At this moment, the legend dragon's mouth orchid was Blackie's storm. As Blackie's contractor, Lin Yuan had always been standing by the spirit pool to accompany Blackie. He silently observed the second transformation of the spirit siphon goldfish dragon species bloodline after its first awakening into a spirit gather goldfish. Lin Yuan clenched his fist tightly. Watching his contracted phase growth and transformation was so painful, he felt heartache and blissful at the same time. Once this path was crossed, Blackie wouldn't have such huge bumps in the future. Blackie might still be a bloody mess, but the captivating red blood that flowed out slowly had a hint of gold. However, Blackie's bulb-like eyes seemed to have left Lin Yuan and were constantly squeezing toward the top of Blackie's head. The spot where Blackie's eyes used to be had a hint of gold. Furthermore, this gold color was constantly deepening. When the place where the eyes used to be had turned completely dark gold, the golden light that rose up from where the eyes used to be was completely dark gold. Blackie immediately quieted down and sank to the bottom of the spirit pool. It lay at the bottom of the spirit pool and didn't seem to have any strength at all. Lin Yuan observed carefully and realized that a thin layer of tough skin had already grown on the surface of Blackie's body. Then, the two big eyes on the top of Little Black's head, which had been separated from the spirit gather goldfish, finally formed two small horns that looked dark gold with black color. Third update button is sick. The latest update may be a little slow, but I guarantee 3 updates every day. End of this chapter. Chapter 345. Immediately after, Blackie's body was covered in black crystal-like scales with dark golden patterns. Layer by layer, they grew on Blackie's body. Blackie's body was also constantly elongating while trembling violently. Previously, Blackie was only 50 centimeters long. Now, the length of the spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, had doubled to 1 meter long. Blackie's body wasn't as round as before. Instead, it had become slender and powerful. However, the black peony flower-like tail didn't change. At that moment, the black peony flower-like tail wasn't as elegant as before. Instead, a layer of bone-like structure grew inside, supporting the tail completely. Right at this moment, in the spirit pool, a pair of dark golden eyes appeared where Little Black's eyes had previously been pushed to the top of its head, where the crystalline keratin had formed. It was said to be the finishing touch. Now that Lin Yuan saw Blackie's evolution process, he finally witnessed it. Previously, Blackie's round and protruding eyes were like 2 big light bulbs, making it look rather cute. But now, Blackie's eyes were long and slender dragon eyes, which had the unique prestige and coldness of a WRM species Fey. After evolving at the bottom of the pool, Blackie had exhausted all its strength. The evolution just now was like going through the gates of hell for Blackie. However, Blackie knew that Lin Yuan had been accompanying it at the spirit pool. Blackie, who was at the bottom of the spirit pool, swung its tail and leaped out of the water, landing in Lin Yuan's embrace. Blackie was now 1 meter long, and its weight wasn't light. However, Lin Yuan, who had been a C-rank spirit chi professional for a period of time, had no problem carrying Blackie, which weighed 15 to 20 kilograms. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth could not help but twitch when he felt Blackie's silly intimacy in his arms. The clothes that he had just changed out of after entering the spirit lock spatial zone were completely wet again. Lin Yuan used the spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, to circulate his spiritual power to sense Blackie's changes. Lin Yuan could clearly feel that Blackie's physique had undergone an earth-shattering improvement. At the same time, although the spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, was still dumb, its intelligence had improved greatly. Previously, Xiao Hei was the kind of student who pretended to be knowledgeable. Now, Little Black belonged to the category of students who only knew a little. At that moment, Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check Blackie's attributes. He found that Little Black was no longer called a Spirit Gather Goldfish, but a Spirit Attract Ichthyosaur. Upon seeing this name, Lin Yuan's eyes shrank. He had never expected the legend Dragon's Mouth Orchid to have such a powerful effect on stimulating the dragon species phase bloodline. At that moment, Blackie was no longer considered a fish fae. If Blackie, the Spirit Gather Goldfish, activated its bloodline, it would be called a Spirit-Drawing Dragonfish under True Data. In that case, Blackie's body was still dominated by the fish phase bloodline. However, Blackie's name under True Data was now Spirit-Drawing Ichthyosaur. This meant that Blackie's bloodline was now dominated by a dragon species phase bloodline. It could even be said that there was not much of the fish phase bloodline left in its body. Lin Yuan was pleasantly surprised by such a discovery. This meant that when Blackie became a fantasy breed, it would evolve from a fish species fae to a dragon species fae. It was already a matter of time before it became a fantasy breed. At that time, Blackie would no longer be an ichthyosaur but a true flood dragon. Now, if he wanted Blackie to become a fantasy breed, what he lacked was a suitable willpower rune. However, Lin Yuan still did not feel like he could comprehend Blackie's willpower rune. Previously, when Endless Summer had used the Enlightenment Law rune to swear to become his protector, Lin Yuan had vaguely felt a trace of inexplicable comprehension in his mind. However, that comprehension was simply too faint, so Lin Yuan could not figure out what it was. Even if that comprehension was completely comprehended and formed into a willpower rune, Lin Yuan felt that this kind of comprehended willpower rune should not be suitable for Blackie. Therefore, he still had no clue how Blackie could become a fantasy breed. However, after Blackie stimulated the trace of dragon species bloodline hidden in its body and evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Lin Yuan found that Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, was almost twice as fast as usual. After Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Lin Yuan found that Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, was almost twice as fast as usual. After Blackie's Spirit Gather Goldfish evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, its exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, had undergone obvious changes. Fey name, Spirit-Drawing Ichthyosaur, Fey species, Ichthyosaur Flood Dragon, Fey grade, Bronze, 10/10, Fey type, Water, Fey quality, legend abilities Sad Smiley Spirit Injection, restore a certain amount of spiritual power in one go and slowly recover the lost spiritual power. Exclusive skill Sad Smiley Spirit Chi Imprint, the spirit chi released by the body is not released into the environment but stored in the Spirit Chi Imprint. It can also guide a small amount of spirit chi released by other dragon species phase that do not exceed the body's grade and inject it into the Spirit Chi Imprint. The Spirit Chi Imprint will be branded on the contractor, and the contractor can actively release the spirit chi stored in the Spirit Chi Imprint. Upon seeing this change, Lin Yuan couldn't help but size up the spirit pool in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. From this change, Lin Yuan saw a very feasible direction. It had to be said that when Lin Yuan had first nurtured the elite Spirit Siphon Goldfish in the Spirit Pool, those Spirit Siphon Goldfish had been nurtured in a very short period of time, and they had indeed earned a lot of savings for Lin Yuan's initial stage. However, that was when Lin Yuan was just starting out. Now, these elite Spirit Siphon Goldfish that were nurtured in the Spirit Lock spatial zone could bring Lin Yuan a negligible income. In fact, when comparing the elite Spirit Siphon Goldfish and the Silver Usneas, the Silver Usneas were in higher demand. After all, the Spirit Siphon Goldfish were just items that assisted in cultivation, while the Usneas produced were necessities in life. Therefore, Lin Yuan had the intention of not using the spirit pool to nurture the elite Spirit Siphon Goldfish and selling them in his purchase with no loss store. Lin Yuan had been providing elite Spirit Siphon Goldfish to Ju Jusin's store. However, if Lin Yuan was willing to exchange the elite Spirit Siphon Goldfish for Silver Usneas, Ju Jusin would probably jump for joy. Now that the Spirit Siphon Ichthyosaur's exclusive skill, the Spirit Chi Imprint, Lin Yuan felt that he could make good use of the spirit pool. Chapter 1 End of this chapter. Chapter 346. The spirit-drawing ichthyosaur could guide the spirit chi released by dragon species phase within a certain range into the spirit chi imprint. Even if it was only a trace, Lin Yuan had to strive for it. This was because every trace of spirit chi in the spirit chi imprint was Lin Yuan's absolute trump card. It could be said that there were almost no dragon species phase that could release spirit chi. Even if there were some precious dragon species phase that could release spirit chi, their size would not be small. Therefore, the most suitable phase for Lin Yuan were the eye spirit siphon goldfish with a trace of dragon species bloodline. Lin Yuan could nurture these eye spirit siphon goldfish with a trace of dragon species bloodline, just like how he had nurtured Blackie to evolve from a spirit siphon goldfish to a spirit gather goldfish. At that time, these eye spirit siphon goldfish would stimulate the trace of dragon species bloodline in their bodies. The spirit-drawing ichthyosaur could use its exclusive skill to increase the spirit chi in the spirit chi imprint faster. Lin Yuan carefully sensed the range of the spirit chi released by the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur's exclusive skill to guide other dragon species phase. He found that the range was actually very small, not even half the size of the spirit pool. However, Lin Yuan did not mind. As Blackie evolved into a fantasy breed, the range would get bigger and bigger. After Morbius grade increased, the spirit pool's area would also get bigger, just enough to satisfy Blackie's constantly expanding range. There were many colors of the eye spirit siphon goldfish, and the most common was red. However, Lin Yuan planned to choose black for all the eye spirit siphon goldfish that he would carefully nurture and activate their dragon species bloodline in the future. This way, the spirit pool in the spirit lock spatial zone would have a hint of the ink dragon pool. After Lin Yuan and Blackie got close for a while, Lin Yuan let Blackie nourish itself in the spirit pool. Although Blackie's bloodline had undergone a qualitative transformation, Lin Yuan and Blackie were close for a while. Lin Yuan let Blackie nourish itself in the spirit pool. Blackie's current mental state was not good. The pain it had just experienced would not disappear because of the transformation of its bloodline. Therefore, Blackie still needed some time to nourish itself before it could recover to its best state. Blackie's dragon species Fey bloodline was already in the dominant position, and it was not as powerful as Blackie. Therefore, when he nurtured Blackie in the future, he could feed it butterfly shell flowers carved from deep-sea butterfly shells to nourish its bloodline. He could also feed Blackie some dragon species Fey essence blood from time to time. He had not dared to feed little black dragon species essence blood because he was afraid that its dragon species bloodline would be too thin. He had rashly used a dragon species Fey's essence blood to strengthen Blackie. It was very likely that the trace of dragon species Fey bloodline in Blackie's body would not be able to suppress the energy in the essence blood. However, the dragon species Fey bloodline concentration in Blackie's body was already strong enough. Dragon species Fey's bloodlines were divided into ancient dragons and flood dragons. As for the ancient dragon species and the flood dragon species, no matter which bloodline evolved to a higher level, they could be called the main dragon species. Among the ancient dragon species and flood dragon species flood dragon species were the rarest. Therefore, it was not easy for Lin Yuan to feed Blackie the flood dragon species Fey's essence blood that it could consume. Blackie might have reached legend quality, but it was still a bronze Fey after all. If there was a silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood to feed Blackie, it would be the most suitable. However, most flood dragon species Fey's grades were relatively high. The spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Blackie, was a complete accident. If not for the legend dragon's mouth orchid, the flood dragon species bloodline in Blackie's body would not be able to reach its current level. However, silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood was also very rare. Where was Lin Yuan going to look for it? He could not possibly wait for the bronze legend dragon's mouth orchid to bloom another dragon's mouth orchid 4 months later. He would nurture another silver flood dragon species Fey and use its essence blood to feed Blackie. Putting aside whether Lin Yuan could use the dragon's mouth orchid to nurture another silver flood dragon species Fey. Even if he could, Lin Yuan would not do so. Therefore, this silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood became the 100 mid-grade strange flames that Lin Yuan had exchanged for with the 10 flower brocade pearls. It was his next target for leaks. Lin Yuan was about to store the wood-weaving house centipede into the diamond Fey storage box and leave the spirit lock spatial zone when he discovered something. He did not know when this bronze legend wood-weaving house centipede had fought with the crane species Fey that had yet to fully develop its genetic model. It was the little grey fellow that was confronting it. Lin Yuan understood what was going on at a glance. He had been accompanying Blackie to purify its bloodline and had not noticed that the wood-weaving house centipede had designs on the cinnabar sweet osman thus. The phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree was obviously more delicious than the cinnabar sweet osman thus for the wood-weaving house centipede. However, the wood-weaving house centipede did not dare to have designs on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Chimey, which was lying in the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's nest, was purifying its bloodline and improving its quality. Just the strange flames sealed in the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branches could make the Bronze X legend wood-weaving house centipede feel a fatal danger. At that moment, among the 130 golden leaves sealed with mid-grade strange flames at the top of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's treetop, the golden flames in more than 30 golden leaves had been absorbed by the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree and Chimey. However, the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree had released any mid-grade strange flames. They could burn the Bronze X legend wood-weaving house centipede to ashes. Therefore, the wood-weaving house centipede had set its sights on the cinnabar sweet osman thus. However, the little grey fellow had long regarded the cinnabar sweet osman thus as its nest. A little guy who had never felt warmth since he was born would risk his life to protect all the warmth he could feel. Therefore, the little grey fellow confronted the Bronze X legend wood-weaving house centipede. The wood-weaving house centipede was docile by nature, and the gold-wind speed rapid antelope had been guarding it. Therefore, the wood-weaving house centipede had not made any moves to attack. Although this little grey fellow looked big, it was only a normal Fey that had yet to fully develop its genetic model. Lin Yuan looked at this little fellow's fierce appearance and went forward to put the wood-weaving house centipede into the Fey storage box. When the little grey fellow saw that Lin Yuan had helped it chase away the bad guy, it trotted toward him. When the little grey fellow saw that Lin Yuan had helped it chase away the bad guy, it trotted toward him. It used its small head and neck to rub against Lin Yuan's palm. Lin Yuan rubbed the little grey fellow's head and said, "Be good, don't be afraid. Grey is the bravest." When he had left the spirit lock spatial zone last night, Lin Yuan had given this little fellow a name. When he had left the spirit lock spatial zone last night, Lin Yuan had given this little fellow a name. When Lin Yuan first saw the little fellow, its entire body was covered in dust. Lin Yuan thought that he might as well call it Grey. Second chapter – end of this chapter. Chapter 347. Grey listened to Lin Yuan's words as if it understood something. Although it did not know what Lin Yuan was talking about, this grey little fellow was extremely dependent on Lin Yuan, who had saved it. Even if Grey had not signed a contract with Lin Yuan yet, it could still clearly feel Lin Yuan's kindness and love. Lin Yuan placed Grey on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branch and played with it for a while. Then, he said, "Grey, I'll come to see you again later. I'll bring you some tang fish to eat. Grey, I'll come to see you later. I'll bring you some tang fish to eat." He was also used to communicating with Feys the same way he treated his human friends. Lin Yuan was also used to communicating with Feys the same way he treated his human friends. It was also because of Lin Yuan's respectful way of communicating with Feys. In the 2 years since he had started raising Genius. Even if Genius's foundation was not good, after 2 years, Genius would be more intelligent than ordinary 100 questions beasts. Lin Yuan was not sure what species this grey little fellow was, but it was a crane species Fey after all. For crane species Feys, their favorite food was tang fish. This little fellow was now recovering its genetic model and growing its body. In addition to the huge and pure spiritual power in the spirit lock spatial zone, nutrition was also indispensable. After leaving the spirit lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan immediately went to change a set of clothes. Previously, the spirit-drawing dragonfish had jumped into Lin Yuan's arms and wet his clothes. Although his clothes were no longer so wet due to Lin Yuan's body temperature. It was really uncomfortable to wear wet clothes. After leaving the room, Lin Yuan saw a small basket at the door with Wen Yu's carefully written faction plan and suggestions. He picked up the plan and suggestions written by Wen Yu and read them carefully. Wen Yu, Liu Jie, and Lin Yuan had lived together in Lin Yuan's mansion. Now, there were Hu Quan, the mother of bloodbath, and endless summer. The people living in Lin Yuan's mansion included young men, young women, middle-aged men, plants, and insects. In a big family, respecting each other's privacy was the minimum respect and care. Therefore, when entering each other's rooms, they would knock on the door. If no one answered after knocking, they would put the prepared things in the basket at the door. The baskets at the door were carved by Hu Quan from all kinds of completely jade-textured wood, and the remaining large pieces were pieced together skillfully. Each basket made of various jade-textured wood fragments was like an exquisite work of art. Lin Yuan stood at the door and looked at Wen Yuxin's development and plan for the faction. Just like that, he watched for an entire hour. The more Lin Yuan watched, the more he realized that she had abandoned her previous sense of superiority when analyzing the major factions. Therefore, he had a very clear analysis of the major forces. Back then, when they came out of the private auction of the King-class powerhouse team, Lin Fan had been stunned for a while. From Gao Feng's words, Wen Yu knew that Gao Feng came from the Gao family in Wind Mist City. From then on, he knew that she knew all the major factions very well. Now, it seemed that Wen Yu's understanding of the major forces could no longer be described as understanding. According to the 7 to 8 thick pages of analysis on the various forces, Wang Chong's expression changed drastically. For each force, Wen Yu clearly summarized the advantages and disadvantages of each force in one sentence. One could say that Wen Yu was a walking encyclopedia of the various major powers. Wen Yu's expertise happened to be Lin Yuan's weakness. It could be said that Wen Yu's ability just made up for Lin Yuan's shortcomings. After Lin Yuan finished reading Wen Yu's private faction development and plan, he walked up the golden bellwood spiral staircase and arrived at Wen Yu's door. Soon, Wen Yu pushed open the door and walked out. She saw that it was Lin Yuan and that he was holding the private faction development and suggestions that she had written for the second time. When he saw that it was Lin Yuan and that he was holding the proposal for the development of his faction, which he had written for the second time. "Young master, what do you think of what I wrote this time?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan revealed a sunny smile on his face and replied, "Young master, what do you think of what I wrote this time?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan revealed a sunny smile on his face and replied, "It's great this time. Your understanding of other factions happens to be in the direction that I'm not good at." Upon hearing that, Wen Yu's face also bloomed with a heartfelt smile. At that moment, Wen Yu suddenly felt that she could finally help Lin Yuan. Hu Quan had already taken a nap and had his liver replenished. After mending his liver, Hu Quan had already started making all kinds of exquisite things downstairs. Lin Yuan built his faction on Star Web, although he did not plan to do so in the outside world. However, he still had to design the faction's internal space. However, he was not in a hurry to design the faction's internal space. He thought about giving the Bronze X Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede to Hu Quan in a few days. After letting Hu Quan contract this Bronze X Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede and promote it to a fantasy breed, the Wood Weaving House Centipede became a fantasy breed. It would undoubtedly be much more convenient for Hu Quan to construct the internal space of his private organization. Lin Yuan had previously agreed to give Hu Quan the Bronze Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede within 10 days. He had completed the enhancement of the Bronze Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede in just a few hours. However, he was not in a hurry to give it to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan planned to give the 3 Silver Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps to Hu Quan after giving them to the Wood Weaving House Centipede. Then, he placed the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life Carps into the Red Sandalwood Longevity Fish Tank. The Red Sandalwood Longevity Fish Tank was paired with all kinds of phase as an auspicious scene, and one had to be able to distinguish the priority. In the past, the Bronze Epic Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps were the masters. Now, the masters were replaced by the Silver Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps. However, the 99 lustrous-winged butterflies, 99 spirit-containing hibiscuses, and 99 5-fortune ranchus were still only at bronze eye flawless. Therefore, these secondary spiritual physicists would also receive a boost in strength. As an auspicious scene, only complementing each other could reflect the harmonious aura within. Otherwise, this auspicious scene would seem a little top-heavy. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer also returned when the sky was getting dark. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer each carried big and small bags. Obviously, they had just returned from the mall. However, Endless Summer's bags were mostly filled with spirit accessories and clothing. The mother of Bloodbath's bags were filled with all kinds of snacks and pastries. During dinner, everyone was more happy. On the contrary, the mother of Bloodbath, which had brought back all kinds of delicacies and snacks, looked a little depressed. During the meal, the mother of Bloodbath had already said no less than 10 times that Liu Jie's cooking was still the best. Lin Yuan could not help but think. If he wanted to get a spider's approval, he had to first get the approval of the spider's stomach. Third update – end of this chapter. Chapter 348. In 2 days, Liu Jie would be able to return to the manor from the Radiance Sacred Hall. He wondered what Liu Jie's position in the Radiance 100 sequence would be after he returned to the Radiance 100 for 3 years. The source-type cocoon of evolution in Lin Yuan's hand would be given to Liu Jie when he returned. To celebrate Liu Jie's return to the Radiance 100 sequence. After dinner, Lin Yuan thought that since he had nothing to do, he might as well go to Star Web and buy the private factions territory. During the day, Endless Summer and the mother of Bloodbath had already applied for Star Web cards and could log on to Star Web at any time. Lin Yuan and Endless Summer agreed to meet at the Star Web Center. Lin Yuan first logged into his purchase with No Loss store. Lin Yuan found that Listen had returned to his former self in the purchase with No Loss store's fan club. Listen, who hadn't been chatting in the group for nearly a month, seemed to have become the focus of the crowd in just a few hours. No matter what the topic was, the eye of the typhoon in the group was always listening attentively. Even the 8 Class 3 Creation Masters and 2 Class 4 Creation Masters, who had joined the group later, could occasionally strike up a conversation with Listen. Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh at Listen's magical diplomatic talent. If different people said the same thing, some people would feel that it was righteous, while others would unconsciously make people think the wrong way. If Listen's ability was used in the right place, it would be extremely terrifying. Apart from measuring the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's value, Lin Yuan had asked Listen to come to the royal capital for a face-to-face talk. Lin Yuan listened with appreciation. In fact, compared to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yuan felt that Listen might be more useful to his faction. Indigo Azure City was not far from the royal capital. If one was quick, they could reach the royal capital from Indigo Azure City in 3 days. Should he help the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce get through this crisis and absorb Listen into his faction? He still needed to see Listen before he could make a decision. If Lin Yuan controlled the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and let Listen continue to manage it, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce wouldn't be able to do so. In that case, Lin Yuan would definitely inject a lot of resources into the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Although Lin Yuan had a good impression of Listen, sometimes he still needed a willpower rune oath to be the most trustworthy. If he could not firmly control those small jigsaw puzzles hidden in the dark under his private faction Sky City, he would not be able to survive. In that case, Lin Yuan felt that there was no need for these small puzzles. He first hung the 10 flower brocade pearls in his purchase with No Loss store. Lin Yuan planned to continue using the blind trade mode after displaying the 10 flower brocade pearls. The intermediate strange flame that he had obtained last time could still be used for a period of time. Therefore, he chose to exchange for the silver flood dragon species phase essence blood as his blind trade target. He would definitely be able to exchange the flower brocade pearls for the silver flood dragon species phase essence blood. However, he wasn't sure how much he could get. However, the flood dragon species phase essence blood that could be exchanged for 10 flower brocade pearls should be enough for Blackie to use for a period of time. He did not care about the commotion he caused when he took out 10 flower brocade pearls and displayed them in his purchase with No Loss store. During this period of time, Many creation masters from the various factions had arrived. Although they were no longer staring at Lin Yuan's Star Web store like before, their attention did not decrease at all. Now, he had taken out 10 flower brocade pearls to display in his purchase with no loss store. This caused the attention that had not cooled down before to soar rapidly. This was because he had displayed 2 waves of flower brocade pearls in a row. Moreover, he displayed 10 of them each time. This proved that the number of flower brocade pearls in the purchase with no loss store was not small. Otherwise, they would not display such a resource that was useful to creation masters in such a large number in the store. These factions also noticed that Lin Yuan was still using the blind trade mode to exchange the flower brocade pearls this time. This made them secretly feel a pain in the ass. The blind trade mode was undoubtedly the most torturous among all the trading modes as it added more chips to lose. If they bet less, it was very likely that the items would be taken by other suckers who were not afraid of losing out. Lin Yuan had openly marked the resource he wanted to exchange, which was the silver flood dragon species phase essence blood. This made the major factions and the creation masters who wanted to exchange for the flower brocade pearls a little confused. Silver flood dragon species phase essence blood was rare, but it did not have much use. This was because creation masters were undoubtedly more willing to use high-grade flood dragon species phase essence blood to concoct spirit fluids than silver flood dragon species phase essence blood. Therefore, many creation masters and factions did not have such useless things like silver flood dragon species phase essence blood in their hands. Therefore, the factions and creation masters who were paying attention to the purchase with no loss store's display of flower brocade pearls, they began to buy large quantities of silver flood dragon species phase essence blood. Of course, Lin Yuan did not know about this situation. Anyway, he only wanted to exchange for the resources he needed. Even if he knew, Lin Yuan felt that the more silver flood dragon species phase essence blood these factions and creation masters obtained, the better. In the end, they would all be harvested by him. Seeing that it was almost time, Lin Yuan went to the Star Web Center to wait for Endless Summer. Lin Yuan waited for a long time but did not see Endless Summer. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard a faint voice coming from beside him. Lin Yuan, I came before you. I've been looking at you for an hour, but you actually didn't recognize me. Lin Yuan immediately recognized that it was Endless Summer's voice. However, when Lin Yuan turned around, Endless Summer's attire gave him a shock. Lin Yuan saw a doll wrapped in star web clothing, which almost completely covered its body, standing beside him. Lin Yuan looked carefully for a long time before he could confirm that the person in the doll was Endless Summer through the 2 eyes that were exposed in the doll's hood. Lin Yuan could not help but hold his forehead. He really did not understand Endless Summer's aesthetic standards. In Lin Yuan's opinion, even if she had to wear a doll costume, it would be fine even if she had to dress up as a bee like the braised egghead. That would still be much better than Endless Summer's tree suit. Endless Summer's clothes were green, so green that Lin Yuan was flustered. Just like that, Lin Yuan brought a moving tree and went to the Star Web Center to handle the procedures. Under the staff's gaze as if it was an idiot, Endless Summer revealed its strength. Then, under the staff's gaze as if it was an immortal, Lin Yuan obtained the pass to set up a private faction on Star Web. After leaving the Star Web Center, Lin Yuan taught Endless Summer how to watch Star Web live streaming. Then, Lin Yuan helped Endless Summer find a fashion and beauty channel. Looking at the large number of Star Web fashion and beauty live streamers, Lin Yuan thought to himself, Endless Summer should be able to know that wearing this kind of tree doll outfit was not beautiful. Finally, after some selection, Lin Yuan helped Endless Summer choose a relatively simple women's clothing matching channel. Endless Summer originally liked those accessories and fashion. Now that it saw the Star Web fashion and beauty live streaming that Lin Yuan taught it to watch, this undoubtedly opened the door to a new world for the first time since Endless Summer reached Suzerain Myth 3. Seeing that Endless Summer had gone to watch the fashion and beauty live streaming, Lin Yuan was relieved to buy the private faction's territory. Not long after Lin Yuan left, Endless Summer was watching enthusiastically when it realized that the live streaming channel that Lin Yuan had found for it was not broadcasting anymore. Therefore, after Endless Summer searched for it, she found 2 rather popular live broadcast channels. Endless Summer could not help but mutter. A 107-day documentary on becoming a crossdresser or a hairstyle teaching before the spirit chi awakening. Which one should I watch? Finally, after some hesitation, Endless Summer clicked on the hairstyle teaching before the spirit chi awakening. This made Endless Summer feel that a new world had opened up in the door to a new world. This new world was simply too wonderful. Latest update tilde asking for votes tilde recent nurturing is over tilde starting to enter the plot tilde, end of this chapter. Chapter 349. Lin Yuan did not need to think too much about the choice of Star Web's private faction territory. This was because every private faction could teleport directly like when he went to the Radiant's sacred altar. This was also the reason why Star Web was more convenient than reality. If one wanted to establish a faction on Star Web and buy a piece of territory, they would have to pay a fixed price of 50 million Radiance dollars. It was precisely because of this high price that many rising factions with insufficient foundations knew that it was very convenient to establish a private faction territory on Star Web. However, they still did not establish a faction territory on Star Web. In fact, it was not impossible for some rising factions to come up with 50 million Radiance dollars. This liquid capital would have a certain impact on their faction's development. However, this was compared to the convenience of establishing a faction territory on Star Web. The impact of this 50 million Radiance dollars on liquid capital was also negligible. The main reason why these rising factions did not establish a private faction on Star Web was that they did not have the money to establish a private faction territory. Rather than being laughed at by the rising and veteran factions with some foundations, it was better not to enjoy the convenience of establishing a faction on Star Web. It was better not to enjoy the convenience of establishing a faction on Star Web. For a faction, sometimes face was the most important. 50 million Radiance dollars was not difficult for Lin Yuan. After such a long time, even if Lin Yuan earned enough money from the purchase with no loss store, it was almost enough to establish a private faction territory. Moreover, there was still the Pinnacle Class 4 Creation Master Cheng Wu's Radiance dollars in the Diamond Fey storage box. In fact, Cheng Wu's Radiance dollars in the Diamond Fey storage box had been spent. During this period, Lin Yuan had spent more than half of it when building the mansion and buying all kinds of spiritual ingredients. It had to be known that the price of mid-grade energy ores in a Diamond Fey storage box was not cheap. The key was that there were simply too many mid-grade energy ores in a Diamond Fey storage box. At that time, in order to help Lin Yuan gather enough mid-grade energy ores, Zhu Jiaxin had gone to the Chamber of Commerce that supplied her. She had requested to pick up the goods from the Chamber of Commerce that supplied her. This operation had even consumed 1/3 of the reserves of mid-grade energy ores of the Chamber of Commerce that supplied Zhu Jiaxin. It was precisely because of the purchasing power of Zhu Jiaxin's store. The Chamber of Commerce that supplied Zhu Jiaxin's Star Web store had directly ranked it from the Class 3 customer position to the main customer position. During this time, Lin Yuan's main way of collecting resources was to exchange items instead of using his own resources to exchange for Radiance dollars. As a result, almost all of his Radiance dollars during this period came from his purchase with no loss store. If Lin Yuan were to continue spending money at his current pace, in that case, it would not take long for the Radiance dollars he had earned from his Star Web store and the Radiance dollars that Cheng Wu had contributed previously to be used up. However, Lin Yuan was not worried about this at all. Once the territory of the Star Web's private faction was constructed, the Star Web's private faction would be able to enter the Star Web. As long as he sent out the fate letter, there would be king-class experts who had comprehended a willpower rune or major factions rushing to contribute Radiance dollars. All in exchange for the 1% chance of success in every letter. Now that he had the pass to build a faction on Star Web, he could not afford to do so. Without hesitation, he took 50 million Radiance dollars from his Star Web card. At that moment, Lin Yuan received a message from the Star Web officials. According to the Star Web's official message, Lin Yuan only needed to wait for a moment. A Star Web official staff member came to help Lin Yuan introduce the relevant matters after opening up a private territory. After waiting for less than 5 minutes, Lin Yuan saw a middle-aged woman with short hair and professional attire walk over. When the middle-aged woman walked over and saw Lin Yuan, her expression clearly froze. This middle-aged woman had been explaining matters related to the establishment of a private faction's territory for a long period of time to the factions that had just opened their star web territories. However, this middle-aged woman had never seen a young man who looked obviously less than 20 years old directly open up a faction's territory on star web. Most emerging factions had developed for a long time in the real world and accumulated a lot of resources. Only then would they open up a faction's territory on star web. The minimum requirement for a faction to open up a private territory on star web was to have a pinnacle king-class expert as the martial support behind it. This youth in front of her had opened up a faction's territory on star web. This meant that this youth in front of her not only had a pinnacle king-class expert as the martial support behind him, he could also take out $50 million radiance in cash at one time. This made the capable middle-aged woman involuntarily sigh. A youth actually had such amazing power in his hands. Although the heirs of some veteran factions with deep foundations did not have such power, the more the veteran faction's foundation was, the more they would not let their heirs go out alone. However, the more established a faction was, the more they wouldn't let their successor roam the world alone. As long as the entire faction worked together to develop in this direction, it would be fine. They would not rashly develop in other directions and touch the areas that their faction had not set foot in before. If they infringed on the interests of other factions' development direction, they would be severely suppressed. After all, the corresponding areas of development would have veteran factions that were at the absolute apex and had the advantage in this direction. After all, in the corresponding field of development, there were veteran forces that were at the absolute peak and had an advantage in this direction. The capable middle-aged woman was only stunned for a moment before she immediately returned to her best state. When Lin Yuan saw the middle-aged woman walk over, he hurriedly went up to greet her. She only froze for a moment before immediately returning to her best state. She introduced to Lin Yuan the relevant matters after opening up a faction on star web with extremely high quality. After listening to the middle-aged woman's introduction, Lin Yuan could not help but secretly nod. It might cost $50 million radiance to open up a faction's territory on star web. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, this $50 million radiance was not spent in vain. As long as one opened up a faction's territory on star web, one would be able to obtain 3 rights. The first right was to be able to invite all the other factions on star web that had opened up a faction's territory. Regardless of whether it was a veteran faction or a rising faction, the star web officials would help to issue an invitation. They could invite other veteran factions and rising factions on star web to visit their faction's territory. In fact, this right was an excellent way to show one's faction's foundation to other factions. At the same time, through star web, one could also communicate with many rising factions and veteran factions that one could not come into contact with in reality. Chapter 1 End of this chapter. Chapter 350. In fact, it could even facilitate some cooperation during the exchange. It could be said that such a right alone could not achieve such a result even if he spent $50 million radiance in reality. The second right was that before the construction of his personal territory was completed, he would not be able to do so. He could seal his faction's territory and not allow outsiders to enter. In fact, on star web, outsiders could not enter the interior of a private faction's territory without the owner's permission. However, people from other factions could freely enter and visit the external environment of a private faction's territory. This second right was completely to protect the face of some rising factions that had just built their faction's territory on star web and those lacking in foundation. The third right was the most useful to Lin Yuan. This was because the third right could release a message to all factions that had established on star web. This third right was not like the first one, which was to show one's faction's foundation and increase the accumulation of connections with other factions at the same time. The third right was to announce one's faction's development direction to all other factions. If the first right was to show one's foundation, then the third right was to show one's faction's function. Due to the different development directions of each faction, their functions were also completely different. Some private factions were formed by a group of experts who could be hired to complete some missions in exchange for resources. Some factions mainly sold some rare spiritual ingredients. Some factions searched for rare fays all over the world. Some factions relied on selling information to obtain resources. Different factions had a variety of functions, and Lin Yuan could use the third right after building his faction's territory on Star Web. He could announce his faction's function to other factions. The function derived from Lin Yuan's faction's development direction on Star Web was to be able to comprehend different willpower runes according to each spirit chi professional. He could order a bronze epic fey that completely matched the willpower rune. In fact, Lin Yuan only planned to use the third of these three rights. With this third right, it was enough to show Lin Yuan's faction's golden signboard. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the short-haired middle-aged woman say, "You must be careful when using these three rights. You must be careful when using these three rights. Except for the second right, the first and third rights can only be used once. After using them, even if you want to spend 50 million radiance dollars, you won't be able to buy this right." The middle-aged woman spoke very seriously, and Lin Yuan nodded to express his gratitude. After the middle-aged woman left, Lin Yuan teleported into his faction's territory. He found that this faction territory was built according to the model of a B-class guild club. The environment outside was very simple and was filled with green flowers and plants. It could be considered quite elegant. The interior of the territory was a standard house. The shape of this house could not be changed, but the internal space of a private organization could be changed at will. After entering the private faction's interior, he found that it was nearly 2,000 square meters in size. In such a large space, there was only this long table and nothing else. The long table inside the territory of a private organization and the flowers and plants outside the organization could all be modified. As long as he placed the items scanned by the Star Web card inside or outside the faction, the transformation could be completed. As the owner of the private faction territory, he could change the interior layout of the house at will. This was the first time he had changed the layout of his private forces rooms for free after he had opened them. After that, he would have to pay 100,000 radiance dollars to the Star Web officials for every change. Lin Yuan couldn't help but sigh. Only the Star Web officials knew how to make money. At that moment, the 2,000 square meter area inside the private faction was like an office. It was divided into a total of 3 floors and many rooms. Lin Yuan completely erased all these structures. He turned this 2,000 square meter area into a separate space. This was Lin Yuan's plan. He planned to build this Star Web private faction's interior into a grand hall. Since it was outside the Star Web private faction's territory, Lin Yuan did not intend to build it. Therefore, he had to be able to deter other factions inside. Lin Yuan did not care about the foundation of those rising factions. The key was to intimidate those veteran factions that had Class 4 creation masters overseeing them. Although there were no decorations in this grand hall of nearly 2,000 square meters, just by looking at its spacious area, one could feel a grand aura. Since Lin Yuan's private faction was built on the floating island Whale's Back, he planned to call it Sky City. Therefore, this Star Web private faction's grand hall should be designed to be like in the sky. Since Lin Yuan's private faction was built on the floating island Whale's Back, he planned to call it Sky City. However, he was not in a hurry to immediately start the construction of this hall. He took out the bronze legend Oath Lily of the Valley and placed the pagoda-shaped bronze legend Oath Lily of the Valley, which flickered with a lustrous white halo, on the free long table in the hall. Then, he left Star Web. However, when he left Star Web, he did not use the second right after establishing a faction. Therefore, after Lin Yuan's faction was built, apart from the main hall in the territory, no one could enter. The external environment was displayed to all the other forces, regardless of whether they were rising forces or veteran forces. Lin Yuan did not care so much. Not long after he logged off Star Web, his phone rang. Lin Yuan picked up the phone and realized it was an unfamiliar number. However, when he picked up the phone, he recognized that it was Listen who had called. Great God, I might have to postpone my trip to Royal City for a while. Listen paused slightly at this point. Before Lin Yuan could ask for the reason, Listen said, "That's right. Great God, I plan to clean up the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's interior before going to the Royal City to see you. After that, I'll move it from Indigo Azure City to the Royal City. Anyway, Most of the resources controlled by the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce are on Star Web. It won't affect those offline resources even if they move to the royal city. When Lin Yuan listened to Listen, he could hear the firmness and sincerity in his words. This made Lin Yuan raise his eyebrows. This might be the reason why Listen could become the eye of the storm in his purchase with No Lost Stores fan club. Today's second update end of this chapter. Chapter 351. It was supposed to be just a meeting and discussion. He only showed that he was considering accepting Listen and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's allegiance. But even so, Listen had taken out all his sincerity and removed all the chaos and unstable factors in the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. After that, he would show Listen the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's best situation to him. It was not so much that Listen was fighting for a chance to be loyal to him. It was more like he was responsible for the decision that Lin Yuan was going to make. Listen was a little nervous after he finished speaking about his plan. At that moment, he heard the youth's sunny and magnetic voice on the other end of the phone. Okay. Upon hearing this word, on the other end of the phone, Listen, who was a little nervous, immediately smiled. Then, he decided to cut the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's chaotic situation as soon as possible within this week and carry out a ruthless change. After experiencing the previous incident, Listen understood a principle. Any unstable factor was a fatal variable at a life-and-death juncture. Even if it was advantageous before, it could become the most ruthless knife to the core at a life-and-death juncture. After hanging up the phone, Lin Yuan went to take a shower. He felt that it was time to adjust his work and rest schedule. In the past 2 days, everything in the mansion was going on in an unstable manner. Wen Yu was analyzing the information of the major veteran factions. Take a faction, for example. The resources in terms of information were often equivalent to the faction's eyes and ears. Almost all the information in Lin Yuan's private faction came from Wen Yu. The source of information that Wen Yu came into contact with came from the Radiant Moon Palace. This directly ensured that Lin Yuan's information on the major factions was 100% accurate. The Radiant Moon Palace's information on the major factions, whether they were new or veteran factions, was like an instruction manual. However, under Wen Yu's arrangement, all the information was organized into the most suitable for Lin Yuan's private faction. In the past 2 days, Lin Yuan had to go to the Radiant Moon Palace almost every day. He went to have a question and answer session with his master, the Moon Empress. Previously, when the Moon Empress was having a question and answer session, it was mainly Lin Yuan asking and the Moon Empress answering. However, during this time, Lin Yuan did not go out to train. He spent almost all his time enhancing phase in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not have so many questions to ask the Moon Empress. Thus, the question and answer session for the past 2 days became the Moon Empress asking and Lin Yuan thinking. The Moon Empress answering and Lin Yuan remembering the answers. Then, according to the Moon Empress' previous question, Lin Yuan started to ponder. Lin Yuan asked again, and the Moon Empress answered again. After going back and forth 3 times, Lin Yuan was basically able to integrate all of these problems. For the past 2 days, every time Lin Yuan left, Mystic Moon would tremble in fear. Mystic Moon couldn't understand why the Moon Empress was so happy. To the Moon Empress, during the past 2 days of question and answer sessions, she finally experienced the feeling of teaching a disciple. This feeling gave the Moon Empress a sense of accomplishment. Most of the questions Lin Yuan had asked the Moon Empress were problems he was currently facing. After asking the Moon Empress, he received the answer to his current question. Lin Yuan immediately understood the problems that he had not understood before, and he was suddenly enlightened. However, he had only encountered a small number of problems, so the questions he asked were rather one-sided. During these 2 days, the Moon Empress would teach him the problems or knowledge that he needed to learn at this stage. The Moon Empress used a question and answer method to teach Lin Yuan. This gave Lin Yuan a new understanding of many of his views. The Moon Empress had always been an overbearing person. However, when she decided to accept Lin Yuan as a disciple, she had already made plans. In the Moon Empress' opinion, accepting a disciple wasn't about managing the disciple. Teaching a disciple wasn't about controlling the disciple. Therefore, after understanding Lin Yuan's thoughts and persistence, the Moon Empress retreated behind him. She had been using her own way to do what a master should do for Lin Yuan. This was a master's respect for her disciple. In fact, in Mystic Moon and Cold Moon's opinion, the Moon Empress had never been a person who was good at expressing her feelings. However, in the past half a year, the Moon Empress had been a teacher in a flurry after deciding to accept a disciple. Now, she was able to watch her disciple grow in her own way. This was Lin Yuan's progress, and it was also the Moon Empress's progress. In the Moon Empress' eyes, her disciple was her inheritance. For the past few days, Lin Yuan had been learning the Moon Empress knowledge. After returning to the mansion, he had raised nearly 50 black dragon eye spirit siphon goldfish in the spirit pool. Every half a day, he would drip a drop of diluted dragon species blood. The effect of dragon species blood and dragon species blood essence was completely different. For a low-grade dragon species Fae, all the blood in its body wouldn't be able to condense into 5 drops of essence blood. This kind of bloodline stimulation required a process, and it would take at least half a month for there to be an effect. At the same time, the massive and pure spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone allowed these dragon eye spirit siphon goldfish's grade and quality to increase very quickly. Lin Yuan had also arranged for Gray's tang fish. The tang fish couldn't be considered a Fae. It was just a fish that grew in grass ponds. Its bones were very soft, and its flesh contained an extremely high amount of sugar. It had an excellent effect on Gray's nutrition. As a crane species Fae, apart from its gray feathers, Gray could already be considered skinny. It was already so skinny that it was only skin and bones. Therefore, Gray didn't just have to repair its damaged genetic model, it also had to replenish the nutrition that its body lacked. For the past 2 days, Lin Yuan had been sleeping very early. Under normal circumstances, he would probably be able to wake up around 7:30 am, but this morning, Lin Yuan was still sleeping when he heard a knock on the door. This knock on the door woke him up from his sleep. But before Lin Yuan could open his eyes, he heard the mother of Bloodbath's voice coming from the door. "Lin Yuan, it's getting late. Quickly tidy up and come down for breakfast." Lin Yuan was still a little dazed from being suddenly woken up. "Got it. I'll tidy up now." After 3 to 5 minutes, Lin Yuan opened his eyes. By the time Lin Yuan opened his eyes, he was already fully awake. Lin Yuan helplessly tidied up his slightly deformed hair, which had just gotten out of bed. Looking at the hair on his head that was standing up, Lin Yuan decisively went to take a shower. After taking a shower and drying his hair until it was half dry, Lin Yuan went downstairs. Normally, the mother of Bloodbath didn't have the habit of waking people up for breakfast. Now that the mother of Bloodbath was abnormally waking people up for breakfast, there was only one possibility. Third update tilde asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 352. That meant Liu Jie was back. Otherwise, even if the mother of Bloodbath was a foodie, it would not be so enthusiastic about breakfast. Sure enough, when Lin Yuan went downstairs, he found Liu Jie carrying breakfast from the kitchen to the dining table. Before Lin Yuan could even see what breakfast was, he was stunned. Based on the smell alone, Lin Yuan knew that Liu Jie should have steamed small soup dumplings and crab roe soup dumplings in the morning. Lin Yuan originally thought that he was already fast enough, but he realized that he was actually the last one to come down. At this time, Hu Quan was waiting for his meal in high spirits. Lin Yuan knew from Hu Quan's mental state and the completely jade-textured wood fragments on the ground in the hall. Hu Quan had worked himself up again last night. On the other hand, Wen Yu was helping Liu Jie. Trays after trays of soup dumplings and crab roe soup dumplings were placed on the dining table made of jade-textured wood. Before they were done, the drawers containing the soup dumplings and crab roe dumplings were piled up high. However, no matter how many Xialong Babo and crab roe soup dumplings there were, he would not be able to eat them. It should not be enough for the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer. As a suzerain myth-breed Fae, Endless Summer ate a lot. However, Endless Summer wasn't very passionate about eating. Endless Summer was holding a small mirror and fiddling with her hair. Upon seeing Lin Yuan come down, Endless Summer immediately ran over and spoke. "Lin Yuan, the Star Web livestream you recommended me to watch yesterday was simply amazing. For the first time, I learned that color can give new life to hair. Lin Yuan revealed a pretty boy's puzzled expression. Didn't I show Endless Summer how to dress yesterday? What does it have to do with hair? However, seeing how happy Endless Summer was, Lin Yuan went along with her. Actually, sometimes a single color doesn't look as good as it looks. Lin Yuan recalled the green clothes that Endless Summer had worn yesterday and could not help but say. Endless Summer nodded in excitement and agreement. I think so too. Less than 3 colors can't be called fashion. More than 5 colors is called taste. Lin Yuan revealed a pretty boy's puzzled expression. What he said just now was just a tactful way of telling Endless Summer that green looked much better when paired with other colors. But if it was some plain color, a single color wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, 2 or 3 colors should be enough for the clothing. If there were more than 5 colors, it would look like a Christmas tree. The mother of Bloodbath saw that Endless Summer and Lin Yuan were still talking endlessly. He snatched the small mirror from Endless Summer's hands and said, Sister Xia, let's eat first. We'll talk after dinner. Endless Summer sat at the dining table and said to the mother of Bloodbath, Let me tell you, Blood Sister, I've discovered the secret of fashion. When we go shopping later, let's go get styled together. I'll design one for you. I guarantee you'll like it. Lin Yuan felt that he had just found a simple way to match Endless Summer's clothes. It couldn't have inspired Endless Summer that much, right? How did she connect the two? Could it be that Endless Summer had an innate fashion sense? It was just a live stream about matching outfits. How did Endless Summer become Chartoni? Everyone in the manor had a very comfortable breakfast. It had to be said that Liu Jie's craftsmanship was really superb. This time, Liu Jie had made a lot of soup dumplings and crab roe dumplings with various fillings, which satisfied the mother of Bloodbath. Just as Lin Yuan was about to ask Liu Jie about the Radiance 100 sequences ranking, Liu Jie suddenly stopped. Liu Jie said solemnly to himself, Lin Yuan, if it wasn't for you, my insect queen would have evolved into a fantasy breed and replicated the source-type hurricane owlet moth with its platinum ability. I'm afraid I can't even enter the top 70 of the Radiance 100 sequence. Liu Jie's face was solemn when he said that. Liu Jie originally thought that he would be able to reserve the Insect Queen's platinum ability for the Radiance 100 sequence test as his trump card. However, when Liu Jie challenged the Radiance 100 sequence 30, Formless Entanglement, and Blue Fullness, he nearly failed. When Liu Jie was about to shake his Radiance 100 sequence ranking, Lan Pang revealed the trump card that he had never revealed before. If it weren't for Liu Jie's prompt decision to have the Insect Queen use its platinum skill to produce 7 hurricane owlet moths, Liu Jie wouldn't have been able to do so. He then let the 7 hurricane owlet moths create a hurricane and control it. Liu Jie was probably going to fail this time. This also let Liu Jie know that he was not the only one who was improving. In fact, his previous companions had not been silent for more than 3 years like him and had improved even more. At the same time, he was fighting the Radiance 100 sequence 30, Formless Entanglement, Lu Pang. This made Liu Jie feel his limitations in combat. This limitation was that Liu Jie could only contract one source-type lifeform, the Insect Queen. The source-type Insect Queen's contract almost occupied all the spiritual energy in Liu Jie's mind. This also made it impossible for Liu Jie to contract any other phase. At the same time, according to the Insect Queen's characteristics, apart from the Insect Queen, Liu Jie could not contract a second Fey or source-type lifeform in this lifetime. Although the Insect Queen was powerful, it could create 5 types of insects now that it had reached the platinum level. It seemed to have an absolute advantage in terms of numbers, allowing Liu Jie to be like an insect swarm on the battlefield. However, as Liu Jie became stronger, the opponents he encountered also became stronger. Gradually, the Insect Queen's problem was revealed. It was the 5 types of insect phase recorded in the Insect Queen's 5 abilities. Liu Jie could choose any combination, and it was almost perfect. However, apart from the hurricane owlet moth, these 5 types of insect phase had different genetic models. The other 4 types of insect phase might have simpler genetic models, but they were still a little weak. Sometimes, numbers could not give an absolute advantage. While the number reached the standard, the strength of the individual phase was equally important. Liu Jie's insect queen's grade was getting higher, and the insect phase produced according to the genetic model were also getting stronger. However, such an improvement was far from enough for opponents who had several fantasy breed phase. Therefore, this Radiance 100 sequence competition forced Liu Jie to face his own problem. Thus, until now, Liu Jie's mood was a little heavy. If this development continued, even if the insect queen's grade was upgraded to diamond, it would not be enough. The diamond ability recorded a type of insect phase gene with a simple genetic model and extremely powerful gene. It would increase Liu Jie's ability again, allowing his strength to take another step forward. However, it would definitely not allow Liu Jie's strength to have a qualitative leap. Chapter 1 End of this chapter. Chapter 353. This situation was what the spirit chi professionals said. The later they got, the more powerless they became. However, Liu Jie did not have the ability to change this problem. Lin Yuan saw that Liu Jie's expression was a little off, so he kept it in mind. Now that everyone was at the dining table, it would be awkward for Liu Jie to ask him if there was really a problem. Lin Yuan thought that after breakfast, he would ask Liu Jie what problem he had encountered when no one was around. As long as the mother of bloodbath was around, it would definitely be the top eater. Therefore, be it the soup dumplings or crab roe soup dumplings, there was nothing left. After eating, Liu Jie began to clean up the mess on the table. Wen Yu returned to her room and began to sort out the major factions' information. Hu Quan had been working hard for the whole night, and now he was having breakfast. Hu Quan's eyelids had started to struggle, and he was ready to go back to his room and sleep until noon. In the past, the mother of bloodbath was more active when it went out, but this time, it was almost as if endless summer had dragged it out excitedly. Lin Yuan sat on the sofa made of water rhinoceros leather in the hall and drank the Three Treasures tea that Wen Yu had brewed in the morning. Lin Yuan did not like the taste of the Three Treasures tea very much. However, when he drank a sip of the Three Treasures tea in this early winter season, the oil secreted by the pine nuts in the tea went into his mouth and into his stomach. It gave birth to a few traces of warmth out of thin air. The taste of the Buddha's hand flower was relatively bland and even a little bitter. However, this bitterness started from the tip of the tongue and spread to the base of the tongue before disappearing. At the same time, there would be a strange sweet aftertaste in an instant. It was somewhat like I have a bright pearl that has been locked up by the dust for a long time. Now that the dust is gone, the light is born, and it shines through the mountains and rivers. The bitterness of the Buddha's hand flower in the mouth turned into a blazing sweetness before it reached the throat. This feeling of sweetness after bitterness, one could distinguish a trace of happiness in it. This mansion was like a big family. Liu Jie took on the job of cooking, sharing and harvesting the taste of happiness while cooking. Wen Yu took on the job of washing clothes. Although the lustrous winged butterflies in the manor could clean all the dust in the manor without a speck of dust. As long as the lustrous winged butterflies flew around for a while, even the dirt on the body would be as clean as new. Even if the clothes were stained with large clumps of mud, the lustrous winged butterfly could help remove them. Therefore, it was reasonable to say that everyone in the mansion did not need to wash clothes or take a bath. However, bathing was never just to wash away the dust. It was also a way to relax. Therefore, the people in the manor still maintained the habit of bathing. Although the lustrous winged butterfly could make clothes very clean, Wen Yu still habitually cleaned everyone in the manor except for their undergarments. The clothes he had changed out of were cleaned. Everything in the manor's main residence was in good order. After a while, Liu Jie cleaned up the tableware that he had eaten in the morning. Lin Yuan was sitting on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Liu Jie walked over and sat beside Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, I heard a piece of news when I participated in the Radiance 100 sequence. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan asked, Big Brother Liu, are there any changes to the Radiance 100 sequence test this year? Liu Jie was a little surprised to hear that. He had not expected Lin Yuan to guess so accurately. It is said that the Radiance 100 sequence test method is going to undergo a huge change this year, but the specific test content has not been announced yet. But when I participated in the Radiance 100 sequence ranking test, I heard that the celestial stairway on StarWeb used to be one-on-one competitions. Now, the celestial stairway is going to set up a 2-on-2 duel. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he heard Liu Jie's words. Lin Yuan did not care about the changes in the Radiance 100 sequence test. No matter how the test changed, there was nothing for Lin Yuan to worry about. However, he heard that the celestial stairway that Liu Jie had mentioned could form a 2-on-2 team after a period of time and have a 2-on-2 duel. Lin Yuan was really interested. Lin Yuan had been watching the recent S tournament on StarWeb, even though the current S tournament was not interesting yet. Even though the S tournament was not very interesting now, it was still in the elimination stage, and the strong teams could instantly kill the weak teams. The duels between the weak teams were mostly the home ground of some silver phase. Occasionally, there would be a few gold phase duels, which were considered exciting parts. This also greatly reduced the level of viewing. However, when Lin Yuan watched the 5-on-5 duels between teams, he only felt his blood boil. This was because most of the 1-on-1 duels were a competition of individual strength, which was the phase grade and quality. Under the premise of equal strength, one would use one's intellect to affect the duel's outcome. Therefore, in the end, the StarWeb 1-on-1 duels were still based on individual strength and intellect. However, when Lin Yuan watched the team competition, he found that it mainly relied on the cooperation between the teams. Although absolute strength could crush the opposing team in the team competition, sometimes, cooperation and strategy could directly affect the direction of the battle. In these elimination matches, Lin Yuan had even seen many weak teams without gold phase use intellect to overturn strong teams with more than 2 gold phase. In fact, he had seen many weak teams without gold phase turn the tables on strong teams with more than 2 gold phase with their wits in these elimination matches. However, the StarWeb Celestial Stairway was about to launch a 2-on-2 duel. A 2-on-2 team could undoubtedly let Lin Yuan have a taste of the 2-on-2 team duel. A 2-on-2 team could undoubtedly let Lin Yuan have a taste of the 2-on-2 duel. Liu Jie looked at Lin Yuan's expression and knew that Lin Yuan was very interested in this 2-on-2 duel. Liu Jie's face, which had looked a little solemn in the morning, also revealed a simple and honest smile. The celestial stairway stars between members of a StarWeb team cannot exceed 5 stars. I'm now celestial 17 stars. Lin Yuan replied with a smile. Then I'll be able to team up with Big Brother Liu when I reach celestial 12 stars. Lin Yuan had long known that Liu Jie's current celestial stairway was 17 stars. Since Liu Jie's insect queen had recovered, he had never participated in a celestial stairway duel. Liu Jie usually made appointments with friends on StarWeb to train his strength and combat skills through private duels. Therefore, Liu Jie's celestial stairway stars had not increased during this period. 3 years ago, Liu Jie's celestial stairway was 37 stars. In the past 3 years, Liu Jie had not participated in the celestial stairway duels. According to the celestial stairway's rules, he would automatically drop 1 star every 2 months. This caused Liu Jie's celestial stairway stars to fall to 17 stars. Liu Jie had always been considered a sequence member in the Radiance 100 sequence who was not enthusiastic about the celestial stairway. Second update – end of this chapter. Chapter 354. Although Liu Jie had returned to the Radiance 100 sequence and entered the top ranks of the Radiance 100 sequence, he was not as strong as before. However, in terms of the number of celestial stairway stars, Liu Jie should be considered the lowest among the Radiance 100 sequence 100 members. Lin Yuan was only a 1-star celestial stairway now, so he still needed to win 11 duels in a row if he wanted to team up with Liu Jie. Lin Yuan originally did not want to challenge the celestial stairway again. However, Liu Jie had said that the celestial stairway would open in the future, and they would form a team to duel. It truly ignited Lin Yuan's fighting spirit. Liu Jie was obviously very excited. However, he was not excited about the 2v2 celestial stairway duel. Instead, he was excited about being able to form a 2-man squad and fight alongside Lin Yuan. Liu Jie's celestial stairway stars were far inferior to Black's celestial stairway stars. Moreover, there was a difference of 16 stars. However, Liu Jie did not take the initiative to remove the stars. Taking the initiative to remove his star would go against his principles. Instead, it became an insult and mistrust of Lin Yuan. Liu Jie said as he recalled the scene of him and Lin Yuan fighting side by side in the Celestial Stairways 2v2 duel. Lin Yuan, actually, my insect queen's normal ability, Bayonet Beetle, can provide flesh energy for your plant Fey. Liu Jie was very excited when he said this, but Lin Yuan was stunned. Liu Jie had always been a power offense-type spirit chi professional. The source-type insect queen was more versatile in all aspects. However, under Liu Jie's choice of skills, the insect queen still focused on attacking in different directions. As for the bayonet beetles created by Liu Jie's insect queen, although feeding them to red thorn could increase the speed at which the sea of flowers spread, however, this was equivalent to Liu Jie giving up on the offensive capabilities of his bayonet beetles. The bayonet beetle might be an insect species Fey that had been inscribed with a normal ability template, but it was a normal Fey. However, if one really wanted to talk about the core of Liu Jie's battle strategy, it would undoubtedly be this normal bayonet beetle. It was precisely because of the existence of the bayonet beetle that Liu Jie was known as the heart of the swarm. However, Lin Yuan's strength was far inferior to Liu Jie's. Liu Jie's source-type insect queen was ultimately a platinum fantasy breed. As a Radiance 100 sequence member and Lin Yuan's retainer, Liu Jie also had his pride in battle. This pride in battle drove Liu Jie to not rely on others in battle. But now, Liu Jie's attitude had changed. Lin Yuan could not help but think of Liu Jie's troubled and solemn expression when he was eating in the morning. Big brother Liu, did you encounter any difficult problems in the Radiance 100 sequence ranking? Lin Yuan sensed the change in Liu Jie's mentality, so he asked very bluntly. After all, such a change in mentality wasn't a trivial matter for a spirit chi professional. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Liu Jie suddenly laughed silently. Liu Jie had heard the same thing before. Liu Jie remembered that the last time he heard about it was at the private auction held by the King Stage Powerhouse. When his expression had changed when he had seen the hurricane owlet moth, Lin Yuan had asked him the same question indifferently. However, after that simple question, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. In the blink of an eye, the hurricane owlet moth was delivered to him. The scene then was exactly the same as it is now. Liu Jie was also very frank about what was on his mind. Lin Yuan, I realized that as my strength increases, the insect queen is slowly becoming more and more limited. Therefore, I plan to shift my combat ability to support in my future battles. Now that the insect queen is already platinum level 7, I'll be able to complete my transformation to support after it advances to diamond level. As Lin Yuan listened to Liu Jie's words, he heard a sense of helplessness and powerlessness. As the insect queen grew to the later stages, it would face multiple fantasy breed Feys of the same grade. They would indeed be somewhat restrained and would no longer be able to rely on the insect swarm to suppress the battlefield in the past. It was not Liu Jie's fault for having such a mentality. On the contrary, Liu Jie was finding a way out for himself as a spirit chi professional. It was like an underground spring, gushing toward the ground. If they encountered a hard rock that their strength could not break through, they would have to change the path of the spring in order to be able to spurt out of the ground. Liu Jie was making such a decision. Lin Yuan looked at Liu Jie with a very serious expression. Big brother Liu, do you prefer a combat-type spirit chi professional or a support-type spirit chi professional? Lin Yuan's words made Liu Jie fall silent. The insect queen was a source-type lifeform that could develop in any direction. Even if Liu Jie wanted to become a healing-type spirit chi professional, the rarest among all spirit chi professionals, the insect queen only needed to use its ability to inscribe the genetic model of a healing-type insect species Fey. Liu Jie could become a healing-type spirit chi professional. However, Liu Jie did not choose this way. Instead, he firmly walked the path of a combat-type spirit chi professional. When a person looked at the future, if there was a choice in the beginning, how could it be easily changed? Lin Yuan looked at Liu Jie and suddenly wore a sunny smile on his face, revealing his small white teeth. Lin Yuan took out a source-type cocoon of evolution from the diamond Fey storage box that he had originally prepared for Liu Jie. This source-type cocoon of evolution was originally a congratulatory gift to celebrate Liu Jie's return to the Radiance 100 sequence. However, it was more meaningful to not use it as a congratulatory gift for Liu Jie's promotion to the Radiance 100 sequence. If a spring was blocked by a boulder, it could only get out by turning. Then this source-type cocoon of evolution would allow this spring to move forward and smash the boulder to spew out the ground. If this source-type cocoon of evolution could let Liu Jie regain his confidence and stick to the path he had always wanted to take, then, this source-type item would really make the best use of it. Big brother Liu, I found this by chance. You can use it. When Liu Jie saw the source-type item that Lin Yuan handed over, a bitter smile appeared on his face. After Liu Jie contracted the source-type lifeform, the insect queen, he could no longer contract any other source-type items or phase. How could Liu Jie not know this? However, Lin Yuan was the one who handed him this source-type item, so he hurriedly took it. However, when Liu Jie took a closer look at the source-type item in his hand, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. At that moment, Liu Jie felt a sense of joy from the bottom of his heart. It made Liu Jie feel a little choked up. The cocoon of evolution made of white mycelium in his hand seemed to weigh 5,000 kilograms. Liu Jie looked up and found that the youth sitting next to him was smiling brightly. Baiduan read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Clawbook House for free. Chapter 355. Lin Yuan knew that Liu Jie was not a creation master, so it was impossible for him to fully know the function of this source-type cocoon of evolution. However, as a spirit chi professional, when he obtained a source-type item, he could sense whether he could use it or not. Lin Yuan watched as Liu Jie looked up at him with eyes full of surprise. His hand holding the source-type cocoon of evolution was still trembling slightly with great joy. Lin Yuan explained the use of the source-type cocoon of evolution. At this time, Liu Jie heard the youth in front of him say with a bright smile, "Big brother Liu, this source-type cocoon of evolution is not for you to contract but for the insect queen to parasitize. When the time comes, as long as the insect queen provides nutrients for the cocoon of evolution to evolve and improve its quality, the insect queen's skills will be strengthened every time the cocoon of evolution advances a grade." Liu Jie already knew that he could not contract phase or source-type items after contracting the insect queen. However, when he got the source-type item, the cocoon of evolution, he unexpectedly found that he could contract it. This was equivalent to giving Liu Jie another path to take, regardless of whether the source-type item in his hand was suitable for him. However, Liu Jie's situation didn't give him the right to say that he would rather have nothing than have something shoddy. But when she heard the words of this sunny and smiling young man, she felt a chill run down her spine. Liu Jie felt as if a resplendent firework had exploded in his mind, creating the most beautiful floating life scroll. There was no one in this world who understood himself and the insect queen better than Liu Jie. Therefore, Liu Jie knew very well what Lin Yuan had said and what the cocoon of evolution in his hand meant. This did not only mean that the insect queen could become stronger, but it also meant that he could continue down the path he had chosen. Suddenly, tears welled up in the corner of Liu Jie's eyes. A drop of hot tears flowed down from the tip of his nose, as if it had never appeared before. During the 3 years of silence and despair, Liu Jie did not shed a single tear. If there was anything in this world that could make him cry, it would be tears of joy. Liu Jie's eyes were filled with gratitude, but he didn't say any words of thanks like before. In the first desperate situation, it was this young man who lit up the light and saved the endangered insect queen, as well as himself. During the second opportunity to enhance the Fae, this youth had lit up the torch, giving him a chance that he wouldn't have a second chance if he missed it once. The third time was when he denied himself for the first time, trying to find a way out of the path that he had denied himself before. This young man was like a sun, illuminating the path that she couldn't cross, allowing her to firmly walk down the path that she had chosen. He had given her a new lease of life twice. Any kind of gratitude would seem hypocritical. Therefore, Liu Jie did not say any words of gratitude. It was faith in the first place, and he had already intended to repay it with his life. There was no need for him to thank him. In Liu Jie's opinion, no matter how strong he became in the future, it was all for the sake of protecting the young man in front of him. Lin Yuan was laughing, and so was Liu Jie. However, Lin Yuan was smiling because the source-type cocoon of evolution had helped him untie the knot in his heart and made him firm on the path he wanted to take. Liu Jie was smiling because his smile contained his silent gratitude and faith. After playing with Liu Jie for a while, he planned to head to the celestial stairway to fight. According to Liu Jie, the stairway's 2v2 duels would happen within this month. Lin Yuan was only a celestial 1-star now. Therefore, if he wanted to have a 2v2 duel on the Star Web Celestial Stairway, he would form a 2-man team with Liu Jie to fight such a small 2-man team competition. In this month, Lin Yuan would have to at least reach Celestial 1-stars to Celestial 12-stars. Now that he was fighting on the Celestial Stairway, Lin Yuan did not dare to guarantee that he could win all the battles. After all, there were many experts on the Celestial Stairway. What if he encountered a crazy big shot who stuck on the Celestial Stairway to do a live broadcast for the sake of the live broadcast effect? Even if Lin Yuan had the Gold Eye Fantasy Eye Source Sand as a trump card, he did not dare to guarantee that he could win all the battles. It was very likely that he would fail at some point, but the probability of that was very small. However, as long as Lin Yuan won 11 more matches than he lost in the next Celestial Stairway duels, it would be fine. Lin Yuan used Black's identity to log on to Star Web this time. He was ready to go to the Celestial Stairway to start the Celestial Stairway duels. However, Lin Yuan did not know that he had used his Creation Master identity to open a Star Web private territory on Star Web. Last night, he had become the laughing stock of the other factions that had opened their faction territories on Star Web. In fact, the veteran factions that had opened their faction territories on Star Web were fine. The veteran forces had deep foundations, and these veteran forces with rich foundations mostly looked down on the rising forces with a little bit of foundation. On the other hand, the rising factions with a little foundation mostly despised those rising factions without much foundation. Such a chain of contempt spread under the sense of superiority directly made those rising factions without much foundation always be at the bottom of the Star Web's chain of contempt. But now, they suddenly found that a faction had just established a territory on Star Web. Many of these rising factions without much foundation had the idea of paying a visit. For the rising factions, it did not matter whether the private faction that had newly opened a territory on Star Web was powerful or rich in foundation. There was no harm in paying a visit. If the private faction that had newly opened a territory on Star Web was powerful, then it would be considered as building a good impression. If the private faction that had newly opened a territory on Star Web was weak, then they could always huddle together for warmth. At that time, Lin Yuan had not closed the private faction's external access rights. This caused these rising factions without much foundation to see that Lin Yuan's faction maintained its appearance when it had just opened a private territory. These rising factions without much foundation seemed to have discovered a new continent and finally found a target that they could despise. The establishment of a private faction's territory on Star Web was a kind of diplomatic display of one's faction's foundation with other factions. Therefore, among these rising factions without much foundation, Lin Yuan's private faction that had just opened a territory on Star Web had already been imperceptibly used as a talking point for these rising factions to show their sense of superiority. Therefore, among these rising factions without much foundation, Lin Yuan's private faction that had just opened a territory on Star Web had already become a talking point for these rising factions to show their sense of superiority. However, Lin Yuan's newly opened private faction was not much in the eyes of those rising factions with a foundation. After all, if these rising factions with a foundation wanted to find a sense of superiority, they could completely find it in those rising factions without foundation. It was like a person could find a sense of superiority in those who were slightly inferior to them. However, this sense of superiority was already very faint in those who were too far apart from them. After all, they were a few levels apart. The late first update end of this chapter. Chapter 356. This was because the sense of superiority often only existed between people of similar levels. If the level difference was too great, this sense of superiority would turn into a sense of distance. They weren't on the same level, so the energy and resources they possessed were worlds apart. This was also the reason why those rising forces without any foundation were unable to gain the recognition of the veteran forces. He couldn't even be bothered to look down on them. It could be said that he had not done anything after setting up his faction territory on Star Web. However, he did not use the second right after opening his private territory. This made Lin Yuan's faction a bumpkin in the eyes of those rising factions without any foundation. However, this also gave his faction a lot of attention. However, these gazes were filled with contempt and curiosity. However, these rising forces that did not have any foundation did not know this. That was a private force that they regarded as country bumpkins. They could not enter the interior of the private property. There was a pot of bronze legend Oath Lily of the Valley that they wouldn't even dare to dream of. He did not know that he had used his identity as a creation master to set up a private faction territory on Starweb and was regarded as a country bumpkin. However, even if Lin Yuan knew, he would probably only feel a little amused. When Lin Yuan logged into the Starweb as Black, he saw Tian Ningning's message. Tian Ningning, Black, I heard that the Starweb Celestial Stairway is going to add a new Celestial Stairway dual mode, but I'm not sure what it is yet. When Lin Yuan saw Tian Ningning's message, he couldn't help but raise his brows. According to Liu Jie, he had just heard about the new 2v2 duel on the Starweb Celestial Stairway from the Radiance Sacred Hall. Although this was not confidential information, it had only been a few hours since Liu Jie learned about it. At this time, Tian Ningning had already heard the news, even though the information she knew was not complete. However, with Tian Ningning's identity as a Starweb columnist, it was indeed very convenient for her to obtain some of the latest news. Based on the timing, Tian Ningning must have told him as soon as she heard the news. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh. It was really convenient to have an exclusive reporter on Starweb. Ever since Tian Ningning became Lin Yuan's exclusive reporter, he only needed to leave everything on Starweb to Tian Ningning to handle. When Lin Yuan had just ascended the Celestial Stairway, his combat video had been recorded in the Starweb video library. Tian Ningning was the one who helped Lin Yuan handle the various matters regarding the profits from the battle recordings. This saved Lin Yuan a lot of trouble. Lin Yuan replied to Tian Ningning, Black, I know. I'm going to fight in the Celestial Stairway duel. Do you want a first-person view? When Tian Ningning saw Lin Yuan's message, she shook her ponytail in a daze. Tian Ningning didn't know whether Black knew what she had just said when he said new. He finally knew what the new dual mode on the Stairway to Heaven was. In fact, it wasn't just Tian Ningning. Many people on Starweb were also guessing Black's identity. After all, if Hei Ruo was just an ordinary spirit chi professional, how could she be equipped with so many high-quality Fays? Moreover, Black's contracted Fays had source-type items. A high-quality source-type item was different from a high-quality Fey. High-quality Fays could be purchased and contracted, but high-quality source-type lifeforms were within the capabilities of Class 4 creation masters. As such, Black's identity had become the husband of many young girls on Starweb. When Lin Yuan appeared as Black, he wore Genius's tool transformation mask. However, Lin Yuan's misunderstood aloofness attracted the attention of many fans. However, since Black's identity had been confirmed to be a youth, it also made Lin Yuan's fans the most among his fans. Most of these mom fans were the male moms who were crazily cheering for Lin Yuan. Tian Ningning might be puzzled, but she wouldn't ask Lin Yuan about this kind of personal question about his identity. Because Tian Ningning knew what to say and what not to say. As Black's exclusive reporter, Tian Ningning had always done her job well and tried her best to maintain Black's image and interests. According to Lin Yuan's request, she would report all the news about Black truthfully. However, when Tian Ningning saw that Black was going to fight in the Celestial Stairway duel and asked if she wanted a first-person view, Tian Ningning was immediately overjoyed and replied without hesitation. Yes. I want it. I really want it. Lin Yuan looked at Tian Ningning's message with some doubt. There is only one first-person view. I can't give you 3. Lin Yuan immediately chose to match his opponent on the Celestial Stairway. After he was matched with an opponent, he shared the first-person view with Tian Ningning. If Black was the most popular on Starweb, it would undoubtedly be Black's official fan club and the official forum. However, the third most popular place on Starweb was definitely the Celestial Stairway's Achievement Altar. As early as 20 days ago, when the Star Web officials had set up Black's virtual image on the Celestial Stairway's achievement altar, it had immediately caused the Celestial Stairway to explode. Even the experts on the Celestial Stairway's hall, which could only be entered by those above Celestial Stairway's 50 stars, had their eyes on Black. In order to obtain an exclusive achievement on the Celestial Stairway, one had to set up a virtual image on the Celestial Stairway's achievement altar. It would be admired by all the people on the Celestial Stairway. This was not something that could be done casually. In the past 100 years on Star Web, there were only close to 200 virtual images on the Celestial Stairway's achievement altar, including Black's identity. It did not mean that one had to be very strong to obtain an exclusive achievement and set up a virtual image on the Celestial Stairway's achievement altar. However, any spirit chi professional who could set up a virtual image on the Celestial Stairway's achievement altar must have something that ordinary people could not reach. The Celestial Stairway's hall, which could only be entered by those above Celestial Stairway's achievement altar, was mostly filled with experts of the older generation. These experts of the older generation usually did not pay attention to some gossip on Star Web. They would not even go to the forum or join the fan club. These experts of the older generation in the Celestial Stairway's hall were absolute bigwigs in reality. Most of the factions were at the pinnacle of king class. Therefore, even though Lin Yuan had protected Millstone Town under the millstone, these experts in the Celestial Stairway's hall had only heard of him. However, when Black's virtual image appeared on the Celestial Stairway's achievement altar, Lin Yuan was considered to have walked into the line of sight of these Celestial Stairway's hall experts. Second update Ask for everyone's opinion Do you think it's better to write in detail, every day, and warm? It's better to quickly push through the plot and push through the main storyline. Ask for everyone's opinion Button has been reversing the car for the new year and is already exhausted but I strive to make sure to do 3 updates every day Love you, Mua End of this chapter. Chapter 357. The experts in the Celestial Stairway Hall could not help but click their tongues in wonder at Lin Yuan's winning streak. It had to be known that it wasn't hard to find experts on the Star Web. There were plenty of experts on Star Web, but apart from Lin Yuan, there had never been anyone who could climb the Celestial Stairway without being defeated. In fact, it was not a good choice for him to participate in the Celestial Stairway duels now. Chimey was still sleeping on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. He could not rashly summon Chimey, wake it up, and let it fight. This would undoubtedly affect the purification and improvement of Enin's bloodline. Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance of affecting Chimey's bloodline purification and quality improvement, he would not do it. The only phase that could attack were Chimey, the Source Sand, Red Thorn, and the Acid Corrosion Queen Bee. Therefore, during the Celestial Stairway duels, he could only choose the combination of Red Thorn and the Acid Corrosion Queen Bee or the Source Sand to attack. Lin Yuan already had the Source Sand, but he had not used it much during the Celestial Stairway duels. During the battle with Poison Beauty, Lin Yuan had used the Source Sand to restrain her Toad Fae in the dark. No one noticed at all. He wanted to use the Gold Eye Fantasy Eye Source Sand as his trump card. But now that he wanted to reach Celestial Stairway 12 stars, the Source Sand would not be able to be hidden. Moreover, he had already used the Source Sand in the battle against the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift Sea of Demons. During that battle, the Source Sand's web of life had saved countless spirit chi professionals' lives. Therefore, these adventurers already knew that Lin Yuan had contracted a fae that could manipulate gravel. Back then, this matter had spread from the mouths of those adventurers, and it was considered quite a big news in the Radiance Federation. At the same time, in Black's forum and fan group, there were people enthusiastically discussing what kind of fae was this sand manipulation fae. However, no one was able to figure out the reason for the endless debate. However, according to those adventurers who had come out from the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, they had all died. This fae that could control gravel was likely a source-type item that could play a defensive or support role. In the end, these adventurers did not see what fae was controlling the gravel. On the contrary, elemental source-type items, which were very rare, were rare. However, there were many different opinions, and there was no definite answer. In his opinion, Something that could be called a trump card must be something completely unknown to outsiders. Only in this way, when he took out his trump card, others would not be able to defend against it. Since others roughly knew about his source-type source sand, he felt that there was no harm in exposing it. In contrast, he felt that it was more suitable to choose Red Thorn, which had been promoted to Silver Eye Fantasy Eye, as his trump card. Although Red Thorn's current level was only at Silver Eye Fantasy Eye. However, Red Thorn's true strength was when it faced large-scale creatures in the wild. Only then would Red Thorn be able to unleash its full power. When Red Thorn unleashed its full power, it was simply equivalent to a seed remover. The weak were only fit to become fertilizer in the sea of flowers and were cruelly eaten by the vines. During the Celestial Stairway duel, Red Thorn was unable to unleash its full strength due to the limitations of the arena. It could only have a restrictive effect, and this control effect also overlapped with the source sand. If they were both at the same grade, perhaps Red Thorn's control effect would be higher than the source sand's. However, the source sand was now a grade higher than Red Thorn. In the end, the source sand was still stronger in terms of control effect. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned to hide Red Thorn, which had become a fantasy breed and had undergone a tremendous change, as his trump card. He would expose the source sand, which had been speculated about but never concluded. If he did not expose the source sand, Lin Yuan was really not sure if he could reach Celestial 12 stars. After the Star Web Celestial Stairway duels, Lin Yuan used the source sand to effortlessly defeat the 3 duelists he was matched with. He directly advanced from Celestial 1 stars to Celestial 4 stars. Each of Lin Yuan's duels was very fast. Tian Ningning did not even see clearly what had happened before the duels were over. She only saw that there seemed to be a small amber object falling to the ground from Lin Yuan's cufflinks. Within a short minute, a quicksand vortex appeared under the feet of the Spirit Chi professionals and the summoned phase. Tian Ningning was already completely excited. At that moment, she was already thinking about how to write the next duel record. Tian Ningning had already determined that the reason Black could control the gravel was because it had contracted an elemental source-type lifeform. Black had never revealed this elemental source-type lifeform in the Star Web duels before. But now, it seemed that this elemental source-type lifeform that controlled the gravel was undoubtedly Black's strongest power. In just a few minutes of the duel, Tian Ningning realized that the quicksand, which did not seem difficult to break free from, was undoubtedly the strongest power that Black had revealed. When the Spirit Chi professionals and Faye's legs sank in, it was as if they had reached into the cruelest place. They let out a miserable howl as though they had experienced some inhuman pain. However, this howl only echoed for a moment before Lin Yuan won the Celestial Stairway duel. This made Tian Ningning, a knowledgeable Star Web reporter, unable to clearly see the elemental lifeform that Lin Yuan was controlling. How exactly did they take the lives of the Spirit Chi professionals and Fays that they were matched with? However, Tian Ningning could see that it was a one-hit kill. Otherwise, Lin Yuan wouldn't have obtained victory the moment the miserable howl disappeared. He wanted to increase the number of stars on the Celestial Stairway. Therefore, he didn't hold back at all in the battle. As long as the source sand formed a quicksand vortex to control the Spirit Chi professionals and Fays, they would be able to control the Spirit Chi professionals and Fays. A chain sword made of ferromanganese would instantly emerge from the sea of sand and bind the feet of the Spirit Chi professionals and Fays. As the Spirit Chi professional and Fey sunk into the yellow sand, Lin Li's eyes widened. The manganese chain sword in the sea of sand would shrink and squeeze the feet that were entangled by the chain without any hesitation. At the same time, the heart-penetrating iron line that the source sand's exclusive skill, Sand Granule Spirit Acceptance, was equivalent to a Platinum 3 flawless Fey. It was like an invisible devil in the sea of sand. It invisibly harvested the lives of the Spirit Chi professionals and Fays that were wrapped by the chain swords in the quicksand vortex and slowly sinking into the sea of sand. After 3 Celestial Stairway duels, Lin Yuan did not feel tired at all. It had to be said that even if Lin Yuan had reached Celestial 4 stars now, he would not be able to reach Celestial 4 stars. The Spirit Chi professionals that he was matched with did not summon any Platinum Fays either. The strongest Fey that Lin Yuan had encountered was only Gold 7 flawless. Lin Yuan's Gold Eye Fantasy Eye Source Sand had already reached the strength of a Platinum Fae. Therefore, Lin Yuan's current duel was equivalent to a crushing duel. After Lin Yuan won another duel, he had fought all the way to Celestial 5 stars. Just as Lin Yuan was preparing to start the next Celestial Stairway duel, the person that he was matched with made Lin Yuan raise his brows in surprise. Yesterday's third update tilde asking for tickets tilde, end of this chapter. Chapter 358. Lin Yuan did not expect that when he was matched with an opponent for the Celestial Stairway 5 stars this time, he would be matched with a Celestial Stairway 5-star opponent. He actually knew the person he was matched with. He was now matched with Poison Beauty, whom he had met during the Celestial Stairway promotion duels. Most of the Spirit Chi professionals on the Celestial Stairway had joined a guild club, becoming a member of the club's main team or reserve team. It was time for the S tournament. The Stairway Tree powerhouses who had joined the guild club would usually spend their time on competitions and group training. However, the number of people on the stairway who did not join a guild club was definitely not small. Among so many people, Lin Yuan was actually matched with the opponent he had encountered before, Poison Beauty. It could not be said that there was no fate between them. After Lin Yuan was matched with Poison Beauty, the face behind the mask only raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't have any extra reactions. Since Lin Yuan was wearing the silver mask that Genius had transformed into, even if Lin Yuan had any expression on his face, no one would be able to see anything. After Poison Beauty was matched with an opponent, she did not immediately check her opponent's information. Instead, it was your little brother, Mai, is boundlessly savage that was speaking to the sky. Stinky brothers in the live streaming room. Ever since I stopped being stuck in the Celestial Stairway promotion competition and started climbing the Celestial Stairway, you stinky brothers haven't been sending as many gifts as before. Quick, everyone, give me a superpower pill now. Later, we'll draw a prize from those who have obtained the superpower pill. The prize is a month of silence. The viewers in Poisonous Beauty's live streaming room interacted with her through the air. Even though Poisonous Beauty couldn't see it during the stairway duel, the viewers in Poisonous Beauty's live streaming room started interacting with her. Who's the weakest? Don't say anything. I support Poison Beauty, but I'll definitely give you the super energy pill next time. Jealous me? I'll give you a big slap. Crawl for me. Low profile book boy. To be honest, as long as it's a star web streamer that I follow, their quality is generally low. 10,000 forms in the heart. I came to Poison Sister's live streaming room to eat. Blood Red Tango, did you guys notice who's on the other side? It would be a massacre. His eyes glowed green. F***CK. Poison Beauty actually encountered Black. Hey Chong Duck, Mommy is cheering for you. After Poison Beauty finished speaking to the livestream room with infinite savagery, she looked at her opponent. Poison Beauty immediately cried out, "Oh oh oh." Poison Beauty's cries were very strange. It contained many unknown stories. She was like a desperate girl who had been chased by a gangster for 30 meters and was about to jump into the river to commit suicide. But at that moment, he realized that the scoundrel had disappeared, and the river was filled with gold coins as far as his eyes could see. 10% fear, 20% anger, 30% excitement, and 40% impatience. Poison Beauty looked at Lin Yuan with glowing eyes and said, "That's right. Black, I didn't expect you to be so obsessed with me. Why are you in such a hurry to meet me, little sister Poison?" Lin Yuan felt that his face behind the mask was about to crack. At that moment, Lin Yuan did not know what Poison Beauty was saying. Why did it sound strange? What kind of expression does this auntie have? Why does it feel like she's going to eat me up? However, at that moment, an amber button-like object fell to the ground from Lin Yuan's sleeve. Without the slightest ripple, it turned into quicksand and drilled into the ground. Everyone's eyes were focused on the silver mask on Blackface, so no one noticed this scene at all. An amber button-like source-type source sand was secretly starting to create sand. Poison Beauty had just finished speaking when her live-streaming room was immediately flooded with comments. Old Grandpa, watching little sister Poison's live-streaming, I actually saw her duel with Black again. What kind of immortal fate is this between little sister Poison and Black? Soft Diamond, Upstairs, don't tell me you want to be a couple. She's a ruthless person. Shadow, F***CK. Auntie Poison is going to eat people. 3-year-old ZE, Poison Beauty is too aggressive. I can't take it anymore. I want to meet Poison Beauty offline. Why didn't she say such flirtatious words to me? Traversing and Crevice, upstairs, do you want to be swallowed by Auntie Poison's tainted toad? You actually dare to meet Auntie Poison. Falling into your eyes, one button to rule pity, one button to bury despair. Poison Beauty, wait to be punished by our ancestors' will. Little boy is scared, F***CK. Poison Beauty, let go of our black baby. We male mothers can't take this grievance. I'm so angry. Among all the duelists on the Celestial Stairway, the number of videos in Black's Celestial Stairway video library was undoubtedly not worthy of his huge amount of attention. It could be said that Lin Yuan's Celestial Stairway duels contained a lot of water. They were all easy victories and could not be considered exciting at all. However, Black's popularity in the Celestial Stairway video library was very high. There was no lack of popularity brought by some teenage girl fans and mother fans who repeatedly paid to watch it. Among the many mother fans, the mother fans ranking had even allowed him to advance from 0-star Celestial Stairway to 1-star Celestial Stairway. It was on the top 10 of the Celestial Stairway video library's popularity list. Although the top 10 of the Celestial Stairway video library's popularity list was also rotated. However, most of them were dominated by the Radiance 100 sequence members and the Celestial Stairway Hall experts battle videos for many years. As for Black's identity, a battle video that relied on instant kills to win appeared on such a list. There was no doubt that it was very abrupt. This was because, according to common sense, only battle recordings of evenly matched opponents and narrow victories were worth watching and studying over and over again. It was not cheap to watch a Celestial Stairway experts battle video in the Celestial Stairway video library. Celestial Stairway experts battle videos were all watched with a fee. There was no situation of buying and repeatedly paying to watch. This also greatly proved the combat power of Black's fans. Just this alone was enough to see how popular Black's identity was on StarWeb. His opponents in the duels that he had just fought were not livestreamers, so they could not immediately let others pay attention to the duels. However, the Celestial Stairway video library's battle videos were immediately synchronized after the duels. This also caused the fans who usually watched Black's battle videos in the Celestial Stairway video library to discover that Black was currently frantically fighting in the StarWeb duels. Moreover, he had won 4 duels in a row. Upon seeing the 4 duels that Black had just saved in the video library, the eyes of Black's fans could not help but light up. What excited the fans the most was that they could see Black's StarWeb duels again. They could also see what Black had never used in the previous StarWeb duels, which was the rumored Fae that could manipulate gravel. They could also read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 359. If a person had something that could attract people's attention, there was no doubt that these things were a person's strength, identity, reputation, wealth, and looks. Be it strength, identity, reputation, wealth, or looks, they could create an extremely strong attraction to people. However, the attraction of these things was inferior to one kind of attraction. The most fascinating thing that people could not help but want to explore was the sense of mystery. Black's entire body was constantly revealing a sense of mystery. A heroic youth who had previously caused a sensation on StarWeb with consecutive victories, had actually achieved such a battle result without even using his strongest Fae. Moreover, no one could be sure that this Fae that could manipulate sand was Black's strongest Fae. The news on StarWeb spread extremely quickly, let alone when there were so many people at noon. Therefore, when Black and Poison Beauty encountered each other, the news immediately spread from her live-streaming room. It immediately caused a large number of fans to pour into her live-streaming room. This caused the number of viewers in her live-streaming room to break through the previous upper limit and reach a new height. In fact, it was reasonable to say that even if the news on StarWeb spread very quickly, it should not be at such a speed. The reason why it was so fast was because of the previous duel between Black and Poison Beauty. Some of Black's fans had entered Poison Beauty's live-streaming room and become her haters. After these haters became Poison Beauty's haters, they became her haters. At the same time, he was viciously beautiful, and as he continued to viciously, he began to express his feelings. Therefore, when they had nothing to do, they would often stay in Poison Beauty's livestreaming room to watch her livestreaming. Poison Beauty's Fae combination might cause no team to be willing to accept her. This also caused Poison Beauty to never set foot in the field of team battles. However, Poison Beauty still worked very hard on the Star Web Duel livestreaming. As a Star Web Duel livestreaming, a typical livestreaming from the Star Web Tower would only livestream for 4 to 5 hours a day. However, Poison Beauty could livestream for as long as 12 hours a day. In addition, she had been working hard during the livestreaming like an artist. From time to time, she would start to scold the livestreaming room's audience and wantonly ban them. Previously, Poison Beauty had sent hundreds of thousands of Radiance dollars in gifts, hoping that she could commentate the duel. In the end, after asking a few questions that Poison Beauty thought were retarded, Poison Beauty actually scolded Roll One, who had spent hundreds of thousands of Radiance dollars in hopes that she would commentate. All kinds of tricks made Poison Beauty blacker and redder. In the past, Poison Beauty's live broadcast was quite entertaining, and some old fans liked to watch it. However, Poison Beauty's control in the livestreaming room was definitely not as sharp as it was now. The reason why Poison Beauty would do such a thing now was because she had to be careful. It was also because he had encountered Lin Yuan in the duel and said some extremely arrogant words, so he had been targeted by Black Lin Yuan's fans. At first, Poison Beauty was a little distressed, but a few days later, she suddenly realized that Black received more attention than Red. Sometimes, there were even hints of red in the darkness. Therefore, Poison Beauty completely unleashed her nature. Like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins, she went on the path of moral integrity, never to return. Lin Yuan looked at Poison Beauty's expression and did not know what to say for a moment. Logically speaking, someone was talking to him, and it was an opponent he had met before. Lin Yuan should also go and greet them. However, Lin Yuan really did not know how to respond to Auntie Poison's words. When Poison Beauty saw that Black did not respond to her for a long time, she was not anxious or depressed at all. She now did not want Black to interact with her as much as before. This was because she had understood the true meaning of an actor. According to Poison Beauty's understanding, a good actor needed to use superb acting skills when the opponent was acting with her. They could display their acting skills to the fullest. Now, Poison Beauty felt that the real actor should be when she was singing. She should be able to act with herself. Even when acting alone, she had to be able to sing the feeling of two people competing. Such an actor could be called a good actor. An even more powerful actor had to be able to sing an opera troupe's play alone. Just like last time, Poison Beauty raised her hand and summoned her fays. Lin Yuan found that the fae that Poison Beauty summoned was still the same as when he had fought against her. There was no improvement. They were still the Gold 9 Elite Illusory Mist Jackdaw and the Gold 7 Flawless Poison Weaving Dark Spider. There were also the Silver X Elite Carrion Umbrella Mushroom and the Silver X Elite Tainted Toad. After summoning her fays, she faintly spread out the array. Poison Beauty said seamlessly, "Black, I know you want to poison me. Black, I know you want to poison me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been matched with me when I was matched up. Let us be matched together. Black, tell me quickly, are you also secretly watching my live streaming room?" The reason why Poison Beauty said this was to bring more popularity to herself and attract some anti-fans. With attention, she could earn more money. During this time, Poison Beauty had been working so hard to improve the Poison Weaving Dark Spider's quality. She wanted to improve the Gold 7 Flawless Poison Weaving Dark Spider to Gold 7 Epic through her own efforts. Now, Poison Beauty's money was almost all saved up. The viewers in Poison Beauty's live streaming room followed Poison Beauty's words. There was an immediate uproar. When Lin Yuan heard her words, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch, and he said helplessly, "What's the opposite of local necrosis? What's the opposite of local necrosis?" Lin Yuan's words caused Poison Beauty to be unable to react for a while. The audience in Poison Beauty's live streaming room only heard a pleasant young voice with a cold taste ringing in their ears. The magnetism seemed to be able to make people reminisce for a long time. Although Black's fans were denouncing her in her live streaming room, the audience in Poison Beauty's live streaming room, especially Black's mother fans, became excited. This was because Black had never said a word in all the videos in the StarWeb video library. Moreover, it was said that when Black and Poison Beauty were fighting, he had also communicated verbally with her. However, the video of that battle was not recorded in the Celestial Stairway video library. Therefore, Black's words were recorded in the Celestial Stairway video library after the battle. Therefore, Black's words were recorded in the Celestial Stairway video library after the battle. It should be the only audio material that Black could find on StarWeb. Baidu, read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 360. Poison Beauty felt that her entire being wasn't good. In just a few minutes, she had racked her brains to come up with a script. She had completely thought of what she was going to do. How she was going to say it later, how she was going to add scenes for herself, and how she was going to act smoothly. Then, how she was going to make her self-directed script reach the climax. However, Poison Beauty had never expected that Black would actually speak now. This was completely different from what Poison Beauty had in mind. Wasn't Black supposed to be aloof and cold? Was he not good with words? Why did he speak just like that? Poison Beauty was calculating the script in her mind. When she heard Black's question, she could not react for a long time. Poison Beauty could not help but feel a little nervous. What's the opposite of partial necrosis? At that moment, Poison Beauty heard the young man's cold voice. I'm so alive. But when this cold young man's voice was heard, Poison Beauty's temper immediately rushed up. Am I being ridiculed? Poison Beauty only felt that the back of her teeth were tight, and she needed to bite it hard to relieve it. Poison Beauty had been a star web streamer for a long time and could completely imagine the audience's reaction in her live streaming room. Although she felt that her veteran actress had been insulted, she also knew that this situation was good for her live streaming room. However, Poison Beauty knew in her heart that such a situation was beneficial to her live streaming room. The popularity brought by the previous duel with Black had basically disappeared in the past 2 months. But now that she had encountered Black again, it would undoubtedly bring another wave of popularity to her live streaming room. However, now that he had encountered Black again, it would undoubtedly bring another wave of popularity to his live broadcast room. It might even be a foreshadowing of the previous popularity. This time, Black would bring even more popularity to her. Poison Beauty thought that if she did not have the quality of an actress to support her, she would probably be so happy that her entire body would be trembling. This was because she knew that the situation with Black this time was completely different from the previous one. The last time she was matched with Black, it was during the Celestial Stairway promotion duel and would not be recorded in the Celestial Stairway video library. But now, this duel would undoubtedly be recorded in Black's Star Web video library. With Black's popularity, if this video was pushed to the top 10 of the Star Web video library by Black's male mother fans, then, wouldn't it be equivalent to me, Poison Beauty, also entering the top 10 of the Star Web video library? Regardless of whether I won or lost, I had this chance because I was matched with Black. Lin Yuan stood there and commanded the Gold Eye Fantasy Eye Source Sand to create sand without leaving a trace. Suddenly, he heard Poison Beauty say, Black, last time, it was because I couldn't dodge your fatal blow. This time, I won't be so careless. Why don't we fight in 5 minutes? If you're an expert, wait for me to get ready before we fight. When Lin Yuan heard Poison Beauty's words, he only felt that this auntie's brain wasn't working, right? Star duels were not a child. Star web duels were not a game for children. Losing and winning seemed easy. Just like last time, Poisoned Beauty had said so many words to stall for time. It was Fang Beauty's Black Beauty had. The reason Lin Yuan had not made a move during the previous duel was because he had waited for Poison Beauty to make a move before counterattacking. It was also because he had needed the source sand to create a large amount of gravel underground to control Poison Beauty at the critical moment. Black with 2 to Black's Beauty. However, it was the result of Chimey and the source sand working together. If the source sand had not controlled the tainted toad, which had swallowed Poison Beauty, under the ground. If the tainted toad had jumped away when Chimey attacked, it would not have been able to kill it. Even if Chimey could kill the tainted toad, it might not have been able to kill Poison Beauty, who had been swallowed by the tainted toad as a meat shield. Now, Chimey was asleep. Lin Yuan could not summon Chimey and could only use the source sand. If he did not let the source sand create sand on a large scale, Lin Yuan would not expose Red Thorn. It was really not easy to win against a long-range poison support-type spirit chi professional like Poison Beauty, who took the unconventional path. If it had been a normal duel, Lin Yuan might have attacked the moment his opponent summoned a Fey. Thus, he could end the battle quickly. However, Lin Yuan just stood there and let Poison Beauty perform. Lin Yuan's spiritual power was transmitted to the source sand underground through his feet. When the source sand received Lin Yuan's spiritual power, its sand creation speed was much faster than usual. Poison Beauty quickly let her Fey set up a formation. Although she said it would take 5 minutes, she did not need that much time. In just 2 minutes, she had perfectly unfolded her formation. The reason why she said 5 minutes was that Poison Beauty hoped that more people would enter her live streaming room. This way, her chances of receiving gifts would be higher and she would be able to get more meals. Once the 5 minutes were up, Poison Beauty jumped onto the back of the Silver X Elite Tainted Toad. Then, she let the Gold 7 Flawless Poison-Weaving Dark Spider lay layer after layer of poisonous spider webs within 20 meters of her. Then, she let the poison-weaving dark spider stay on the poisonous spider webs around her, ready to protect her at any time. This time, Poison Beauty did not let the illusory mist jackdaw spew out a large amount of poisonous fog. Due to her previous combat experience, she knew that the opponent was on the fantasy breed avian Fey. That layer of glazed flame could evaporate the poisonous fog that the illusory mist jackdaw spat out. Therefore, Poison Beauty did not intend to waste the spiritual power to let the illusory mist jackdaw release the fog. Instead, she planned to use the spiritual power on the Gold 7 Flawless Poison-Weaving Dark Spider and the Silver X Elite Carrion Mushroom. She let the carrion mushroom spread the fungi that could make wounds rot quickly all over the place. Compared to the water mist poison, these fungal poisons were undoubtedly much stronger in terms of resistance to high temperatures. Although Poison Beauty knew that her battle with Black could bring popularity, she was not convinced that she had lost to Black in the previous battle. Previously, she could not figure out why the tainted toad would send her a feedback that it was bound by the ground under its feet and could not jump at a critical juncture. Since she could not understand, she blamed it all on the tainted toad's feet being stuck in the soil when it used the land pollution ability. When the tainted toad used the land pollution ability again, the soil would indeed become as sticky as mud when it was covered with poison. Yesterday's third update asking for tickets those who used the free coins to read this book, if you like it, make up for a full subscription woo thank you for your continued support. End of this chapter. Chapter 361. This time, Poison Beauty looked at the perfect formation she had created and had the idea of defeating Black. If she could defeat Black, Poison Beauty believed that her popularity would not be as simple as being matched with Black. As the number of people in Poison Beauty's livestream increased, a thick layer of bullet comments covered the screen, basically blocking the battle scene. This caused the audience who only wanted to watch the duel to block the bullet screen. He waited patiently for the battle between the silver-masked youth. As for the viewers who were making fun of the bullet screen comments, they were thinking that after this battle ended, they would be able to watch a special video in the StarWeb video library. Therefore, he was not in a hurry. After all, he was a fan of Black's mother. This was especially true for the male moms among the moms fans. Black's battle videos had to be watched at least 100 times. 5 minutes might seem like a short time, but it passed in the blink of an eye. However, during these 5 minutes, as he kept injecting spiritual power into the Gold Eye Fantasy Eye Source Sand, the Source Sand's spiritual power had increased tremendously. As a result, the bottom of the stairway battle arena was filled with the Source Sand's sand particles. At the moment when Poison Beauty launched her attack, the Silver X Elite Carrion Umbrella Mushroom sprayed a large amount of fungi that could rot flesh into the air. The Gold 7 Flawless Poison-Weaving Dark Spider had secretly used the Mist Spider Web earlier. The invisible, misty spiderweb melted into the air. Hence, at this moment, when the gold 7 flawless poison-weaving dark spider used the web attachment skill, the atomized spiderwebs in the air combined with a large number of fungi that could make flesh rot, producing layers of venomous spiderwebs that pushed toward Lin Yuan. Poison Beauty's plan was very simple, which was to ensure her own safety. The poisonous spider web constantly reduced Lin Yuan's living space. In the end, they would use poison to slowly erode all the lives in the duel arena, using a battle of attrition to win the match. Under Poison Beauty's berserk attack, the ground trembled. Poison Beauty, including the viewers in her live-streaming room, saw that the silver-masked youth didn't panic at all. The young man casually waved his hand. At this moment, apart from the ground beneath the silver-masked youth's feet, the entire celestial stairway duel arena had turned into a boiling sea of sand. As the sea of sand boiled, it frantically devoured anything that touched it. It wanted to sink everything that existed on the sea of sand into the sea of sand. Then, it was crushed by the heavy pressure of the sea of sand. At that moment, Poison Beauty, who was on the back of the tainted toad, could completely feel the powerlessness of the tainted toad under her feet in the sea of sand. Poison Beauty herself couldn't stop the filthy toad from sinking into the sea of sand, because the tainted toad's feet had just sunk into the boiling sea of sand. When Poison Beauty ordered the tainted toad to jump onto the web weaved by the gold 7 flawless poison-weaving dark spider, she could no longer do it. Poison Beauty felt the familiar sense of restraint from the tainted toad. Poison Beauty couldn't help but shout, "Why, this is the feeling." Although the poison-weaving dark spider was on the web, it didn't come into contact with the boiling sand below. But under the pull of the yellow sand raised by the sea of sand soon, these stacked cobwebs would be pulled into the deepest part of the sea of sand after being stuck to a large amount of gravel. In just a moment, the poison-weaving dark spider would have nowhere to hide. Even a battle-hardened duelist like Poison Beauty couldn't deal with such a sudden and violent attack. Poison Beauty felt like she was a small, broken boat swaying in a natural disaster. She could sink and die at any moment. Under such a sea of sand, wanting to find a foothold was an extravagant hope. Therefore, Poison Beauty could only let the Gold 9 Elite Illusory Mist Jackdaw pull her arm and bring her into the air. Only then did she barely escape the disaster. But before Poison Beauty could heave a sigh of relief, she saw over a dozen meandering blue-black chains vaguely appear in the sea of sand. At the front of the faintly discernible blue-black chains in the sea of sand was a huge blue-black broadsword with an extremely strong metallic luster. The moment the chain swords drilled out of the sea of sand, they flew nearly 10 meters into the air. In Poison Beauty's horrified gaze, these chain swords seemed to be intricate and precise. In an instant, they formed a blue-black steel cage. It firmly locked Poison Beauty and the Gold 9 Elite Illusory Mist Jackdaw in the cage. At first, a few violent collisions could still be heard in the steel cage. These were the efforts of Poison Beauty and the Gold 9 Elite Illusory Mist Jackdaw in order to break free of this steel cage. However, it was all in vain. Lin Yuan stood in the distance, stepping on the yellow sand. The yellow sand formed a huge palm under Lin Yuan's feet. The fingers of the palm were slightly bent as if protecting Lin Yuan, who was standing in the center of the huge palm and commanding the battle. Such a scene was simply an artistic duel in the eyes of the audience in Poison Beauty's live-streaming room. In the world of sand, a silver-masked youth was like the king of sand, dominating everything in the world of sand. Such a scene was simply too shocking. As the blue-black chains danced, they pulled down the steel cage in midair. When the steel cage was pulled into the boiling quicksand, the quicksand boiled even more intensely. The quicksand boiled even more violently, forming a huge whirlpool of quicksand beneath the bluish-black steel cage. This blue-black steel cage seemed to be sealed with some evil and was buried under the sea of sand. At that moment, a mournful and painful crow's cry faintly came from underground. At that moment, the audience in Poison Beauty's live-streaming room discovered that the silver-masked youth had actually won this star web duel. The boiling quicksand in the entire duel arena had already stopped boiling when the silver-masked youth won. Only the silver-masked youth stood ramrod straight, looking incomparably otherworldly against the sea of sand. Only the silver-masked youth stood ramrod straight, looking incomparably otherworldly against the backdrop of the sea of sand. At that moment, many of Poison Beauty's mother fans in Black's livestreaming room turned into girlfriend fans. However, the people watching this duel in Poison Beauty's livestreaming room, whether they were Black's fans or not, were all very excited. In their eyes, this duel proved that the silver-masked youth, Black, had used gravel to weave a miracle in the controlled Class 3 abyss-dimensional rift. They were all cheering for Black. The bullet comments in Poison Beauty's livestreaming room were once again flooded with Black. Awesome. Bullet comments flooded the screen. This neat and tidy Black. Awesome. Awesome. It was like a declaration. It was an announcement that a silver-masked youth was creating miracles again and again in overcoming obstacles. Or rather, this silver-masked youth, Black, was a miracle in itself. Today's first update. End of this chapter. Chapter 362. It had to be said that although Black had not fought hard, he had won this duel. However, the content of this duel was extremely high because Black had subverted everyone's previous understanding of Black. Throughout this duel, Black had been using a combat system that he had never used before. It seemed that in this duel, Black had not displayed the complete combat power of this combat system. He had already ended the duel. At that moment, the audience in Poison Beauty's livestreaming room could not help but complain about her. Why was she so weak and let Black end the duel so quickly? She had not seen enough, okay. However, the audience in Poison Beauty's livestreaming room only complained. Although Poison Beauty had a lot of haters, none of her haters would criticize her strength. After all, her strength was obvious to all. Poison Beauty's strength did not lie in her Gold 9 Elite Illusory Mist Jackdaw and Gold 7 Flawless Poison Weaving Dark Spider, which were two outstanding Poison-type Fays. Instead, it was because Poison Beauty contracted the Silver X Elite Carrion Umbrella Mushroom and the Silver X Elite Tainted Toad. These four Poison-type Fays had coordinated their abilities and exclusive skills with each other. Otherwise, Poison Beauty would not have been so terrifying during the Celestial Stairway promotion duels. She was known as one of the most reliable gatekeepers during the Celestial Stairway promotion duels. At that moment, the audience in Poison Beauty's livestreaming room was filled with countless curiosity. What exactly was that chain sword that came out of the sea of sand? How did Poison Beauty and the Cold Mist Jackdaw die in the depths of the sea of sand? Perhaps only Poison Beauty was clear about this. Perhaps it had happened so quickly that Poison Beauty had already lost her life before she could react. In any case, Black had once again broken everyone's previous impression of Black with a brand new stance. At the same time, Black's identity was shrouded in a thick layer of mystery, making people unable to help but explore. In the past, many people felt that Black's strength was due to his age and talent. Now, when mentioning Black's strength, they had to lament his age and talent. They had to lament Black's true strength. Black's stance was like a natural disaster that had instantly killed Poison Beauty, an experienced combat class Spirit Chi professional. From this point, it could be seen that Black's combat ability had completely exceeded the standard of gold. Previously, when Black was going to participate in the Radiance 100 sequence competition, even his fans felt that he was only participating this year. None of them felt that with the strength Black had displayed, he was qualified to pass the competition and become a Radiance 100 sequence member this year. But now, judging from the strength that Black had displayed, Black's strength was far superior to Black's. It did not seem impossible for Black to become a Radiance 100 sequence member this year. After all, the strength that Black had displayed had already reached the platinum level. In that case, did Black have any other trump cards that he had yet to reveal? Perhaps only the mysterious Black herself would know about this. After Lin Yuan completed this Celestial Stairway duel with Poison Beauty, the Celestial Stairway duel with Poison Beauty was completed. He was no longer preparing for another Celestial Stairway duel. He checked Black's personal information on Star Web. Name, Black gender, male height, 179 cm weight, 62 star tower floor, Celestial Stairway 6 stars Spirit Chi occupation, healing type professional profession level, advanced exclusive achievement, straight to the Celestial Stairway, ascended the Celestial Stairway from the Star Tower without losing a single match. Contracted Fae, Morbius, Bronze 10 Legend, 1000 Questions Beast, bronze 10 legend, twilight starbird, silver 1 fantasy eye, red thorn, silver 1 fantasy eye, acid corrosion queen bee, gold 1 legend, source sand, gold 1 fantasy eye, jewel record sad smiley star tower, 100 jewels, 100 wins, 0 losses. 100 highest floor, celestial stairway promotion jewel, 2 jewels, 2 wins, 0 losses. Celestial stairway, 6 jewels, 6 wins, 0 losses. 6 highest star count. Lin Yuan looked at his celestial stairway, which had changed from celestial 1 star to celestial 6 stars. It was not difficult for Lin Yuan to experience 5 consecutive jewels. The only one that could be considered difficult was the duel with Poison Beauty just now. If Poison Beauty had not given him so much time to prepare, Lin Yuan would have wanted to defeat her. In a situation where the source sand had not spread out its array, he would have needed to spend a lot of effort. However, Poison Beauty's stalling for time also happened to give Lin Yuan time to prepare. Looking at his personal information, Lin Yuan was surprised to find that it was almost the new year. He had grown a centimeter taller in the last few days of the new year. His height had increased from 178 to 179. Furthermore, he had also gained a kilo of weight. This discovery made Lin Yuan pleasantly surprised. Lin Yuan was a man who wanted to grow to 1.8 meters tall. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw Tian Ningning's message. Tian Ningning, Black God, you're amazing. Your elemental source-type lifeform is really too strong. When Lin Yuan saw Tian Ningning's message, he couldn't help but blink. I don't think I can afford to be called Black God. Black, just call me Black. For some reason, when Tian Ningning saw Black's message, her heart skipped a beat. He only felt a sense of youthfulness. It was as if a teenager was shy after receiving praise. Tian Ningning recalled the elemental source-type lifeform that Lin Yuan had just revealed and asked. Tian Ningning, Black God, can you tell me the grade of that elemental source-type lifeform that can control gravel? When Lin Yuan saw Tian Ningning's message, he couldn't bear to look at her address. However, there was no hesitation when he replied. Black, Gold Eye Fantasy Eye. He felt that there was no need to hide his source-type source sand's grade. He knew that even if he did not tell Tian Ningning, Star Web scholars would analyze it. Rather than letting the Star Web scholars analyze it and let others know about it, it was better to let Tian Ningning post it openly. When Tian Ningning saw Lin Yuan's message, she was elated. At the same time, she was secretly shocked by Lin Yuan's strength. After chatting for a while, Tian Ningning still asked Lin Yuan how to write the battle records of the 5 Star Web duels. After giving a brief reply, he logged off Star Web. Lin Yuan looked at the mirror in the room and wanted to see if he had really grown taller by 1 centimeter. After looking for a while, Lin Yuan let out a sigh. It was impossible to tell that he had grown a centimeter taller. Furthermore, Lin Yuan had also gained 500 grams of weight, but he didn't know where he had gained weight. Someone knocked on Lin Yuan's door. Lin Yuan opened the door and saw Liu Jie standing there in high spirits. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan said with a smile, Big brother Liu, has the cocoon of evolution completed its parasitism? Upon hearing that, a different look flashed in Liu Jie's eyes. Yes, the source-type cocoon of evolution has parasitized the insect queen. It won't be long before the cocoon of evolution reproduces in the insect queen's body and absorbs its energy. It will soon be able to promote to normal. At that time, my insect queen's normal inscribed bayonet beetles can also be enhanced. When Lin Yuan saw the look in Liu Jie's eyes, he knew that the heart of insect swarm's fighting spirit and ambition had returned. Beast Evolution Quotient Latest Chapter 363 Lin Yuan had grown taller. Website. Chapter 363. If one were to ask who understood a person the most, then it would undoubtedly be that person himself. The same principle applied to Liu Jie. In this world, only Liu Jie understood himself the best. After obtaining the source-type cocoon of evolution from Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. After Liu Jie returned to his room to prepare, he let the source-type item cocoon of evolution parasitize the insect queen. When Liu Jie heard about it, he knew how helpful this source-type cocoon of evolution would be to him. The cocoon of evolution had parasitized the insect queen. As the insect queen's contractor, Liu Jie could naturally feel the improvement to the insect queen after the source-type item cocoon of evolution leveled up. This was a complete qualitative change. Previously, Liu Jie felt that he could not continue to develop as a combat-class spirit chi professional. This was because Liu Jie had discovered that the core of his battle strategy, the bayonet beetles, which formed the foundation of his insect swarm, were weak. But now, Liu Jie only needed to slowly let the insect queen provide energy to the source-type cocoon of evolution. It allowed the source-type cocoon of evolution to increase its grade and quality. After the source-type cocoon of evolution grew, every unit in the swarm would undergo a qualitative change. On the basis of qualitative change, quantitative change was carried out. Then, the increase in strength would show a trend of exponential growth. Liu Jie was now very confident about his future. Sometimes, when one regained their confidence and took a step forward on the previous path, it was equivalent to being firm towards the same goal twice. While Lin Yuan was happy for Liu Jie, he pondered for a moment and said, "That's right. Brother Liu, I'll get you some protein cocoon chrysalises in the next few days." Letting the insect queen consume a large amount of protein cocoon chrysalises will be of great help in improving the quality and level of the cocoon of evolution. When Lin Yuan had used true data to check the source-type cocoon of evolution, he had found out. The cocoon of evolution was a parasitic source-type lifeform like the acid corrosion queen bee. But in terms of growth, it was extremely similar to red thorn. The source-type cocoon of evolution could only absorb the energy of the host to upgrade its level and quality. Moreover, the cocoon of evolution was a mycelium-type source-type lifeform. In addition to energy, the mycelium's reproduction and division also required a lot of insect protein. The protein cocoon chrysalis was a relatively common spiritual ingredient. Due to its rich insect synthetic protein, it had always been the favorite of insect species phase. Most insect species phase would grow carapaces. Therefore, some spirit chi professionals would feed insect species phase some protein cocoon chrysalises during the critical period of their evolution to assist in their evolution. It could be said that this protein cocoon chrysalis, which was rich in synthetic insect proteins, had many benefits for the insect queen's evolution. Although the protein cocoon chrysalis was a relatively common spiritual material. However, his insect queen was already a platinum fantasy breed source-type lifeform. A platinum fantasy breed source-type lifeform's energy level had even reached the diamond level. Therefore, the protein silkworm chrysalises consumed by Liu Jie's insect queen had to be at least gold grade in order to be effective on the insect queen and the cocoon of evolution. In Lin Yuan's opinion, the protein cocoon chrysalis that were most suitable for the insect queen to consume should be based on the insect queen's energy level, which was diamond. If Liu Jie's contracted insect queen could consume the diamond rank protein silkworm chrysalises, in that case, it would be most beneficial to the insect queen and the cocoon of evolution. The benefits of eating the platinum protein cocoon chrysalis were not small. However, compared to the diamond protein silkworm chrysalis, it was still far inferior. Moreover, if the diamond protein silkworm chrysalis was eaten over time, it could also subtly improve the insect queen's quality as a fantasy breed source-type lifeform. This situation was similar to when the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Blackie, had eaten the butterfly shell flower to stimulate the dragon species bloodline in its body. Just eating it once or twice would not have any effect. If it could be eaten over time, the improvement would be very obvious after a period of time. If not for the source-type cocoon of evolution, Lin Yuan would not have been able to enhance other phase in the same way. When Lin Yuan had used the spirit chi crystals to enhance phase, the source-type cocoon of evolution's quality and grade would increase. However, it did not matter. If he could feed the insect queen the diamond protein silkworm chrysalis, it would increase the cocoon of evolution's grade and grade. Whether it was the insect queen's grade or the cocoon of evolution's grade and quality, it would be a good way to kill two birds with one stone. Although the diamond protein silkworm chrysalis were not priceless, they were still very expensive. This was also why the stronger the spirit chi professionals were, the scarcer the resources would be. Lin Yuan, I've been feeding the insect queen gold protein cocoon chrysalises. At this rate, The cocoon of evolution will successfully grow from a mycelium lifeform to a normal source-type lifeform in 2 months. As soon as Liu Jie finished speaking, Lin Yuan waved his hand and said, "That's right. Brother Liu, I'll think of a way to get some high-level protein cocoon chrysalises in the next few days." Before Liu Jie could speak, Lin Yuan continued to speak. "With the discovery of this source-type cocoon of evolution, I can see more possibilities for the insect queen. Big Brother Liu, although you can't contract other phase, there might not be only one source-type item like the cocoon of evolution. A source-type item with the same function as the cocoon of evolution might be discovered in the process of collecting a large number of source-type items." Liu Jie originally wanted to refuse Lin Yuan's help in finding the protein cocoon chrysalises. On one hand, Liu Jie could earn enough money to buy the protein cocoon chrysalis if he worked hard. On the other hand, it was also because she was used to being independent in the past, so she subconsciously rejected it. However, now that Lin Yuan had finished speaking, Liu Jie could no longer think of rejecting it. Liu Jie did not think of rejecting it again. Although Liu Jie had not said any words of gratitude recently, there had always been indescribable gratitude in his heart. 3 redemptions had ignited light in his life, which was a supreme kindness. However, not only were there 3 redemptions, but the youth in front of him had also given him the right to look forward to it. Liu Jie felt that he really had nothing to repay. The only thing he could do was to become stronger and use his life to protect it. Liu Jie looked at Lin Yuan and nodded firmly. "Okay, I've returned to the Radiance 100 sequence now. I can go to the Guild Alliance to apply for the establishment of a guild club. If you go and do it, there's no need to go through an audit. It can be done on the same day. I'll go and do it in a while." Liu Jie had actually come to Lin Yuan for this matter. Yesterday's 3rd update end of this chapter. Chapter 364. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. "Brother Liu, it just so happens that you can go to the Guild Alliance today to apply to establish a club-like guild. In 2 days, ask Uncle Hu to find someone to build the base of the guild club on the vacant land behind the manor." In a few more days, Lin Yuan gave the Bronze X Legend wood weaving house Centipede to Hu Quan to contract. At that time, Hu Quan would be promoted to a Class 5 spirit craftsman. Although Hu Quan was already at the level of a Class 5 spirit craftsman. However, having the standard of a Class 5 spirit craftsman and becoming a Class 5 spirit craftsman recognized by the Radiance Federation were completely different. After Hu Quan became a Class 5 spirit craftsman, he would become the Radiance Federation's top lifestyle class spirit chi professional. Naturally, he would come into contact with other 5-star lifestyle class spirit chi professionals. At that time, Hu Quan would invisibly pull in a batch of Class 5 lifestyle class spirit chi professionals for Lin Yuan. He had Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman. If Lin Yuan wanted to look for these Class 5 lifestyle class spirit chi professionals to do things in the future, it would be much more convenient. Liu Jie looked at Lin Yuan and said seriously, "Young master, what should we call the guild club we're going to establish?" When Lin Yuan heard how Liu Jie addressed him, he raised his brows slightly. Liu Jie usually called him by his name because of his previous request. However, Liu Jie would still call him young master during critical moments. As for the guild club's name, Lin Yuan had never thought about it. However, since he wanted to establish a guild club and participate in the Guild Alliance's S tournament. Therefore, the goal of the clubs and guilds would definitely be to work hard towards the championship. Since they wanted to win the championship, they had to be unafraid of the clouds that cover their eyes, only because they are at the highest level. The highest level of the sky was the dome. The dome of the heavens is considered the highest. Let's call our guild club the Dome of the Heavens. When Liu Jie heard Lin Yuan say the word dome, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was as though she could feel the magnificent waves in Lin Yuan's heart. Just a glimpse of this magnificent scene filled Liu Jie with a sense of heroism. Liu Jie kept repeating in his mind, "The top of the sky. The top of the vault of heaven. The dome of heaven." This was a kind of awe-inspiring heroic spirit. After leaving Lin Yuan's room for a long time, Liu Jie still clenched his fists tightly. After Liu Jie left the room, Lin Yuan looked in the mirror and touched the back of his head, feeling a little conflicted. It was a happy thing that he had grown taller. However, he had clearly grown a centimeter taller, but he couldn't see it. He felt a little uncomfortable. As for the diamond-grade protein cocoon chrysalis, the easiest way for him to get it was to spend a massive amount of Radiance dollars to buy it on the market. No matter how expensive the things that could be bought on the market were, in a sense, not precious. This was also why he had not thought of using the flower brocade pearls to exchange for the diamond protein silkworm chrysalis. As a diamond rank spiritual material, the diamond rank protein silkworm chrysalises were circulating in the market. This was because the protein cocoon chrysalis was a diamond insect species phase cocoon that was constantly retreating. Furthermore, this diamond insect species Fae could shed the protein cocoon chrysalis at least 5 times a year. For spirit materials that were relatively easy to obtain, exchanging scarce resources for them was an extremely unwise thing to do. Even if he did not care about these losses, he would definitely not do so from the perspective of developing his faction. If he wanted to develop a force, he had to ensure that everything was done in an orderly manner and that all resources should be allocated and integrated in the most reasonable manner. Only in this way could he accumulate a boundless foundation. Liu Jie was now Radiance 100 sequence number 30, and the Radiance Sacred Hall had announced it. This made many of Liu Jie's fans, who had been following him since he entered the Radiance 100 sequence, cry. Everyone in the mansion was happy for Liu Jie. Bai Hao and Wang Fan were the happiest. Bai Hao and Wang Fan were Radiance 100 sequence members and members of the A-Rank Guild Club's main force. Bai Hao and Wang Fan had long known that Liu Jie was going to return to the Radiance 100 sequence. However, when Bai Hao and Wang Fan were at the Radiance Sacred Hall's venue and witnessed Liu Jie's return to the Radiance 100 sequence, hot tears gushed out uncontrollably. The tears were the testimony of many years of friendship. Therefore, Bai Hao and Wang Fan couldn't help smiling for the next few days. However, on the second day of the competition, the Star Web reporters wrote that it was a mocking smile for the opponent. This matter made Bai Hao and Wang Fan very annoyed. On the day Liu Jie went to the Guild Alliance to apply for the establishment of a guild club, it was completed. This was enough to prove the privileges of the Radiance 100 sequence members in the Radiance Federation. However, Liu Jie did not choose to let the Guild Alliance directly announce the Dome Guild Club. Instead, he planned to announce it when he participated in this year's Radiance 100 sequence competition and became a Radiance 100 sequence member 2 months later. This was because when Liu Jie applied to establish the Dome Guild Club, there was only one word added in the column of the president's name. This word was black. Over the past few days, Lin Yuan had used the blind trade method. He had used 10 flower brocade pearls to exchange for about 170 drops of silver WM species phase essence blood. This harvest made Lin Yuan feel very dissatisfied. Although silver WM species phase essence blood was rare, it was not very useful. The rarity of silver WYRM species phase made the flower brocade pearls a creation master's favorite. The amount of silver WRM species Fey blood that could be exchanged was still limited. This time, Lin Yuan could not say that he had suffered a loss, but he definitely did not make a profit. This matter also made Lin Yuan understand that the blind trade method was not suitable for exchanging for particularly unorthodox things. However, these 170 drops of silver WRM species phase essence blood were more than enough for the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Blackie. At the same time, Lin Yuan had also used the market price to buy 3 diamond protein silkworm chrysalises for Liu Jie in the rare lifeform pavilion. The platinum fantasy breed insect queen often needed close to 10 days to consume and absorb a diamond protein silkworm chrysalis. These 3 diamond protein silkworm chrysalises were enough for Liu Jie to use for a month. With the diamond protein silkworm chrysalises, Lin Yuan believed that it would not take 15 days. The source-type cocoon of evolution could be promoted to normal. Over the past few days, Lin Yuan had been frantically enhancing the usnias. He had enhanced a large number of bronze usnias to silver. Lin Yuan was using this method to gradually enhance the spiritual power contained in his body. After returning from the question and answer session with the Moon Empress on Radiant Moon Mountain, Lin Yuan was preparing to put the 3 Silver Legend Mountain Eternal Life Carps into the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. He also gave the bronze legend wood weaving house centipede, which had split during the evolution, to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan's phone rang. Genius was currently lying in Lin Yuan's arms. Genius kept rolling around in Lin Yuan's arms and acted coquettishly. It still tickled Lin Yuan from time to time and played with him. Lin Yuan was most afraid of tickles, so he had to constantly avoid Genius' mischievous little paws. After Genius evolved into the 1,000 questions beast, its habit of sleeping had improved a lot. However, it would become very energetic in the afternoon, and its habit of becoming more and more troublesome had not changed at all. When Genius heard Lin Yuan's phone ring, it said, "Lin Yuan, quickly pick up the phone." When Genius saw how Genius was making a fuss in his arms, Lin Yuan could not help but lovingly stroke Genius' soft fur. "If it wasn't for you always making a fuss, I would have picked up the phone long ago." Genius was still making a fuss previously, but when Lin Yuan picked up the phone, Genius obediently stayed in Lin Yuan's arms and did not move at all. Genius was still making a fuss previously, but when Lin Yuan picked up the phone, Genius obediently stayed in Lin Yuan's arms and did not move at all. The sensible one was afraid of disturbing Lin Yuan's conversation with others. When Lin Yuan picked up the phone, he heard Lissant's voice coming from the other end. "Expert, I have already arrived at the agreed location." Lissant was standing at the entrance of the manor, looking a little nervous. Lissant knew that today's meeting would determine his and the listening deer Chamber of Commerce's future. Lin Yuan patted Genius, who was in his embrace. "Go, smart guy, go to the manor gate and bring the guest in." Today's first update end of chapter. Chapter 365. After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Genius replied in a childish voice. "Lin Yuan, meow. I'm going now." Lin Yuan reached out his hand and helped Genius comb the fluffy and long fur on its head. He then gently rubbed Genius' head twice and was about to bend down to put Genius down. At that moment, Genius leaped up from Lin Yuan's embrace and jumped to Lin Yuan's neck. It rubbed its fluffy and delicate face against Lin Yuan's cheek. Then, it jumped and gracefully landed on the ground from Lin Yuan's shoulder. As Genius ran, its two long, pure white tails shook elegantly behind it. Its posture was indescribably graceful. Lin Yuan felt the residual warmth on his face and revealed a bright smile. Chimey was still in a deep slumber, and apart from accompanying Lin Yuan, Genius didn't spend much time with him. Genius usually guarded Chimey under the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Among all of Lin Yuan's fays, as Genius had evolved from a housekeeping beast like the 100 Questions beast, it had the highest intelligence. Therefore, among all of Lin Yuan's fays, apart from the bracelet that Morbius usually wore on Lin Yuan's wrist, Genius took good care of the other fays. Even the blue flash-purple butterfly, which was not very enthusiastic toward Lin Yuan, would fly around Genius for a while every time Genius entered the spirit lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan had been with Genius and Chimey for so many years, so he naturally knew Genius very well. Genius might be very sensible, but it was still a feline fae. In the end, Genius was also a feline fae. Feline fays had always been arrogant by nature. Just like that gold cat species fae that Xin Ying had contracted. Normally, apart from Xin Ying, it would not even bother with Zhong Xiaobai. It was the same for Genius, but apart from the other feline fae's pride, it was also very sensible. Genius had extremely high intelligence and could clearly see Lin Yuan's interpersonal relationships and preferences. Therefore, Genius would try its best to accept the people or things that Lin Yuan accepted. Just like now in the manor, not to mention Liu Jie, Wen Yu, and Hu Quan. Even the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer, who were also fays, liked to play with Genius when they were free. However, when facing some unrelated people, Genius completely maintained the indifference and elegance of a feline fae. For example, Listen, who was standing at the mansion's entrance. Listen might have high EQ and was good at handling interpersonal relationships. However, the longer he stood at the entrance of the manor, the more nervous Listen became. At this time, the sky was getting dark, but one could still vaguely see things in the distance. Standing at the entrance of the manor, Listen discovered that it was already early winter in the royal capital. However, the interior of the manor in front of him was as green as midsummer, and there was a faint bamboo fragrance wafting from it. As the saying goes, a man cannot live without bamboo. The diffuse bamboo fragrance wafted into Listen's nose. The bamboo fragrance, which should have calmed him down, made Listen even more nervous. At that moment, Listen heard a childish but polite voice ring in his ears. "Welcome to the return from faraway manor. Follow me." Upon hearing this sound, Listen searched for a long time before discovering that it was a pure white cat. At this moment, the pure white cat was squatting in the middle of the entrance of the manor. The pale blue eyes were looking at him with a trace of alienation and sizing him up. Listen hurriedly said, Thank you. You've worked hard." After Listen finished speaking, the white cat stood up and walked in front, leading the way. From time to time, it would look back. Listen kept having the feeling that the white cat was looking back to see if the person behind it had lost track of it. When Listen first saw the white cat, he subconsciously thought that it was a housekeeping beast. However, he immediately dispelled this thought. This was because in this world, there would not be any housekeeping beast as light and elegant as the white cat in front of him. Housekeeping beasts were simply too common. When Listen was young, he also had a top-notch housekeeping beast. Even the top-notch housekeeping beast could not have the vigor in the eyes of the white cat in front of him. Moreover, this white cat had two tails behind it. From far away, Listen saw a large manor in front of him that emitted a soft halo. However, he did not think much about it. The closer he got, the more nervous he became. When he got close to the manor, Listen suddenly discovered a horizontal board above the manor. The words "Return from far away" were engraved on the horizontal board. What surprised Listen was not the words on the horizontal board, but the material of the horizontal board was actually completely jade-textured old willow wood. Before Listen could have too many thoughts of being surprised, the childish voice rang in his ears again. "We're here." Then, Listen saw the white cat with two tails leap forward. Listen looked up and saw that the white cat had already jumped into the arms of a sunny youth of about 18 or 19 years old. It was intimately rubbing this sunny youth's neck. Listen also recognized this sunny youth in front of him. This youth was the one he had met on Starweb, the one who could casually take out any kind of bronze epic fae. He was also a god with at least the resources of an advanced Class 4 creation master. When Listen looked at Lin Yuan also looked up and sized up this young man with phoenix eyes and a beauty mole at the corner of his eye. Lin Yuan found that this young man with phoenix eyes and a beauty mole at the corner of his eye could be seen to be capable and calm. Under the capability and calmness, there was a trace of maturity that did not match his appearance. He had obviously experienced a lot of storms and waves. It was just that Listen's almond-shaped eyes had very heavy dark circles around them, and he had the air of a prostitute. Clearly, Listen had been dealing with the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's mess. After dealing with the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's mess, he immediately rushed over. Lin Yuan replied with a smile. "Come in and take a seat." After saying that, Lin Yuan took the lead and sat on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Then, he picked up the three treasures tea on the table and poured a cup for himself and Listen. However, Listen, who was behind Lin Yuan, had already exposed the mansion's furnishings when Lin Yuan walked inside. Listen was completely dumbfounded at the door. Usually, Listen would think that he was too tired and anxious, so he was in a trance. Or he could guess at the jade-like luster in front of him, which was decorated almost entirely with jade-textured wood. Could it be an imitation made from ordinary jade stones? However, the calming effect of the halo and the unique texture of the wood told listeners that all of this was real. Even though Listen had a very high EQ, he was also stunned for a moment. When Listen came back to his senses, he found that the sunny youth had already sat there and poured 2 cups of steaming tea, looking at him calmly. Baidu, read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 366. At that moment, Listen felt that his horizons had suddenly changed. Previously, Listen had felt that the arrangement of those rising factions, which used a large number of high-grade plant fays to decorate the rooms, was already extremely luxurious. But now, looking at this mansion in front of him, Listen seemed to truly know what was called unparalleled foundation. Listen resisted his surprise and sat in front of the youth. Before Listen could speak, he heard the sunny youth opposite him say, "It's cold in early winter, and you're not wearing much. It's early winter and you're not wearing much. Drink some hot tea to warm yourself up." Lin Yuan had called Listen over this time because he had already planned to accept the loyalty of Listen and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. However, Lin Yuan still wanted to know what difficulties the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce currently encountered through Listen. Lin Yuan wanted to take over the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and let Listen manage it as a wisp of dust under his cloud layer because the Chamber of Commerce could bring convenience to Lin Yuan. As long as the difficulties encountered by Listen and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce were less than or equal to the convenience brought by the Chamber of Commerce's functions, Lin Yuan was willing to accept the loyalty of Listen and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. If trouble and convenience were equal, it would mean that what Lin Yuan did was useless. Even so, Lin Yuan was willing to bring Listen and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce under his command. This was because Lin Yuan fancied Listen's talent. If Lin Yuan wanted to establish a private faction where everyone was an elite, talented people like Listen were still very necessary. Lin Yuan raised his brows slightly as he took a sip of the Three Treasures tea in the sweet white glazed teacup in his hand. The Three Treasures tea in the cup should be called the Four Treasures tea. When you brewed the Three Treasures tea, she had put in a rather rare plum. The addition of the plum made the Three Treasures teas taste richer. The sourness and sweetness in the plum eliminated the fragrance of the oil in the pine nuts. On the contrary, it set off the fragrance of the other two ingredients in the Three Treasures tea, plum blossom and Buddha's hand. When Listen heard Lin Yuan's words, his heart warmed. No matter what, this sunny youth in front of him gave him equality and respect. For so many years, especially after the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's incident, Listen had been troubled by the Class 3 Creation Master's retainers many times. But at this moment, just the mansion that this sunny youth lived in had immeasurable wealth. With such a foundation, when the sunny youth treated him like an old friend. First, he poured a cup of hot tea for himself to wash away the coldness of early winter, as if he was meeting an old friend. This feeling made Listen feel warm and fuzzy. Listen picked up the teacup and took a sip. Listen had rushed all the way and did not care about drinking water at all. He was already thirsty when he stood at the entrance of the manor. Now, with just a small sip, the fragrance of the plum immediately made his mouth water. But then, Listen tasted the tea in his mouth. Although his expression did not change, the more he thought about it, the more shocked he became. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce mainly sold Buddha hand flowers. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had channels for Buddha hand flowers ranging from bronze to gold. Furthermore, it supplied many Class 4 and Class 5 shops on Star Web. This allowed Listen to understand the Buddha's hand flower very well. When Listen first tasted the Buddha's hand flower in the tea, he didn't have any reaction. Immediately after, Listen discovered that the taste of this Buddha's hand flower was very similar to the platinum Buddha's hand flower that he had tasted before. It was just that the taste was much richer. If the platinum Buddha's hand flower was air-dried and sold as a spiritual ingredient, a small piece would cost more than 300,000 radiance dollars. Such a precious thing was actually placed in the teacup as an imperceptible light taste in the tea, just to enrich the taste. Such luxury once again made Listen understand the foundation of this cheerful youth in front of him. It had to be known that having money and not treating money as money were actually two different levels to a certain extent. Lin Yuan saw that Listen had drunk the hot tea and warmed up his body. "Tell me about the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce." Lin Yuan went straight to the point and asked the main topic. If it were someone else, they might polish for a long time to give an answer that would be the most beneficial to them. However, Listen did not do so. Instead, he truthfully picked out the key points of all the problems and difficulties he had encountered and introduced them clearly. Listen did not elaborate on the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's advantages. This was because he knew that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's advantages should not be considered much in the eyes of this youth in front of him. Therefore, Listen focused on the difficulties the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had encountered. As Lin Yuan listened to Listen's words, his fingers gently tapped on the completely jade-textured table in front of him, letting out a light sound. After Listen finished his introduction, he was no longer nervous and anxious. Listen had placed everything in front of this youth in front of him. Therefore, how would this youth decide next? Listen knew that he only needed to wait. When Listen had first arrived at the mansion, he had been too nervous and shocked, so he walked a little stiffly. Now that he had relaxed, Listen picked up the tea in the teacup on the table and took a sip. Immediately after, when Listen turned his head, he saw a spectacle that did not belong to the human world. In this purple brilliance, there were butterflies flapping their wings and 5 fortune ranchus swimming in the purple brilliance. Listen only felt that his titanium eyes had been pierced directly. The 5 fortune ranchu wasn't too rare. An elite 5 fortune ranchus was only 60 to 70 radiance dollars. However, where could he see a large group of bronze flawless 5 fortune ranchus? Listen, who was drinking tea, was startled and started coughing. At that moment, Lin Yuan also finished thinking about it. The trouble the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce encountered now was a rising faction that wanted to take over the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. However, behind this rising faction was the shadow of a veteran faction that did not have a rich foundation. This veteran faction was the faction that had absorbed the Class 4 Creation Master and 3 Class 3 Creation Masters from the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Even if a veteran faction did not have rich trump cards, it would at least have a Class 4 Creation Master. In terms of combat power, if a faction was recognized as a veteran faction by other factions, then, it must have combat power above King Class. However, it could not be said that the faction that targeted the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce must have Emperor-class experts in terms of combat power. The Radiance Federation's positioning of Emperor-class experts was that only S-rank Spirit Chi professionals and Myth Breed Phase could be called Emperor-class experts. However, the definition of combat power above King Class was relatively vague. As long as it was a suzerain Myth 3 Fae, even if it did not become a Myth Breed, it could be said to have combat power above King Class. In terms of combat power, as a suzerain Myth 3 Fae, Endless Summer was already at the peak of Emperor-class combat power. Therefore, although Lin Yuan's private faction had fewer people in terms of combat power, however, in terms of peak combat power, it did not lose to other factions. Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 367. Lin Yuan was only taking over the empty shell of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, which was not a big deal. Moreover, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's creation master resources had already been absorbed by the veteran factions. If this veteran faction bit him after he took over the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, he wouldn't be able to survive. Since Lin Yuan had decided to establish his own faction, he would not be able to do so. He did not mind using this veteran faction without any foundation to establish his dominance. This way, they could also intimidate the other veteran forces with a foundation in the future. He wanted those veteran forces with deep foundations to consider whether they were qualified or not when they set their eyes on his private forces. Apart from the clash of combat strength, as long as the opponent didn't have a Class 5 Creation Master, they would also be able to compete with each other in terms of resources. He was confident that he would have the upper hand. Even if the other party had a Class 5 Creation Master, if they were to compete in the resources of Bronze Legend phase, they wouldn't be able to compete. Lin Yuan actually dared to compete with a Class 5 Creation Master in terms of foundation. After weighing the pros and cons, Lin Yuan decided to accept Listen and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's allegiance. Although the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was only an empty shell, its channels and functions were still there. Under Listen's handling, it could be said that 1,000 things were waiting to be done. Currently, the only trouble they had encountered was a rising force under a veteran force, which was eyeing them covetously and wanting to annex them. Compared to a talent like Listen, Lin Yuan felt that he was not at a disadvantage. Since Lin Yuan was done weighing, he raised the teacup in his hand and extended it forward. When Listen saw Lin Yuan's action, an ecstatic expression appeared on his face. Listen hurriedly picked up the teacup in his hand and knocked it with Lin Yuan's. Then, he excitedly drank the 3 treasures tea in one gulp. Then, Listen half knelt on the ground with the etiquette of a knight. A silver rune shot out of Listen's mental strength. I'll listen and swear by the willpower rune. Then, Listen looked at the cheerful youth sitting on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Lin Yuan did not stop Listen's actions and just said, "Listen to me. I am Lin Yuan." Upon hearing that, Listen replied respectfully with a solemn expression. "I, Listen, swear by the willpower rune to dedicate my life and the listening heron chamber of commerce to Lin Yuan. I only ask for protection so that I can lead the listening heron chamber of commerce." Listen did not say what would happen if he broke the oath. This was because Listen had dedicated everything he had to Lin Yuan in his oath. As long as Lin Yuan thought about it, he could deprive Listen of his control over the willpower rune. It caused Listen to be rejected by the will of heaven and earth. Although this would not take Listen's life, to some extent, being rejected by the will of heaven and earth was no different from taking his life. Listen had used a willpower rune to make such a heavenly oath, and it could not be said to be light. However, Listen had used the willpower rune to make such an oath not only to express his loyalty but also for himself. Listen had actually been considering whether to pledge loyalty to Lin Yuan during this time. After all, Listen had only seen Lin Yuan once on Star Web, so he did not know much about him. However, after thinking for a while, Listen smiled bitterly and realized that he was not qualified to think at all. Listen knew that even if he and the listening heron chamber of commerce attached themselves, it was very likely that they would become dispensable pawns. That was also the best choice out of all the options he currently had. Now that Listen had attached himself, what he had to do next was to maximize his value as much as possible. To prove his ability. This would allow him and the listening heron chamber of commerce to get more resources. From this moment on, Listen had become Lin Yuan's true servant. These servants and retainer knights were different from guardians. From this moment on, as long as Lin Yuan protected the listening heron chamber of commerce, he would be Listen's master. At that moment, Hu Quan pushed open the room's door. He walked out of the room. Hu Quan looked like he had just woken up and was still a little confused when he walked out of the room. According to the usual time, this should be the time when Hu Quan started to become a tool and work. Hu Quan was already in a daze, but when he went downstairs and saw the scene in front of him, he felt that he had not woken up yet. What posture are these two youths downstairs in? It's too strange. Hu Quan did not witness the entire process of Listen swearing with the willpower rune. However, just by looking at this half-kneeling youth with phoenix eyes and a beauty mole at the corner of his eye, he knew. This youth should also be considered a member of Lin Yuan's side. After Listen used the willpower rune to make the oath, Lin Yuan stepped forward and reached out to pull him up from the ground. Lin Yuan did not refuse when Listen used the willpower rune to swear loyalty to him. This was because using a willpower rune to make an oath in this world was indeed a very powerful guarantee. Just like in Lin Yuan's previous life, the relationship between people always had to be on guard against each other in the face of absolute interests. If one party unilaterally tore up an agreement regardless of the consequences. In that case, this agreement was no different from a piece of scrap paper. However, in this life, using the willpower rune to make an oath was equivalent to turning an agreement into an irrevocable oath. If the party who swore with the willpower rune tore up the agreement, they would have to pay the price equivalent to their lives. This was a bit like two strangers getting married before falling in love. Lin Yuan was embarrassed at the thought of this. What kind of strange analogy was this? After Listen used the willpower rune to make an oath, Lin Yuan could indeed use Listen with ease and pour resources into Listen and the listening heron chamber of commerce. He could let Listen display his talents and develop the listening heron chamber of commerce. At the same time, Listen's development of the listening heron chamber of commerce could also bring more benefits to Lin Yuan. This was considered a win-win situation for both Lin Yuan and Listen. After Listen used the willpower rune to make an oath, he directly became one of Lin Yuan's trusted people. Lin Yuan saw Hu Quan walking over and said, "Uncle Hu, it's better to be busy during the day and sleep at night. Uncle Hu, you should be busy during the day and sleep at night in the future. Staying up late hurts the liver." In Lin Yuan's opinion, even if Hu Quan was a liver emperor, he would not be able to take it in the long run. After all, even Zhong Xiaobai knew to soak wolfberries in a thermos cup for health. Hu Quan hurriedly waved his hand and said, The dead of the night is more compatible with craftsmanship. When Listen heard Hu Quan's words, the way he looked at Hu Quan changed slightly. When Listen heard Hu Quan's words, the way he looked at Hu Quan changed slightly. In Listen's heart, he had already given Hu Quan, this uncle with a sloppy beard, a colored label. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth twitched slightly. He could not force Hu Quan not to sleep at night, so he would let Liu Jie give Hu Quan some food supplements. Lin Yuan was originally prepared to give Hu Quan the bronze legend wood weaving house centipede that he had evolved before. Now that Hu Quan walked over, Lin Yuan said, "Today's first update tilde a new main storyline has been brewing for a long time tilde today's first update tilde a new main storyline has been brewing for a long time tilde tickets requested tilde welcome to the book club and drive enthusiastically." End of this chapter. Chapter 368. Uncle Hu, have you reported to the Spirit Craftsman Association? While speaking, Lin Yuan took a hibiscus cake that when you had baked from the table. He tore the hibiscus cake into small pieces and fed it to Genius, who was nestled in his arms. Genius was quite fond of these soft desserts. However, when it came to the taste, Genius' taste was the same as Lin Yuan's. They both loved to eat meat, especially pork. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan laughed out loud. Originally, Hu Quan was still a little sleepy, but now he was immediately awake. Ha ha ha. I've already reported it. After some time, those old fellows from the Spirit Craftsman Association will come back and hold a ceremony for me. Hu Quan was very excited when he said this. This made the face of a sturdy uncle with a scruffy beard smile like a fragrant chrysanthemum. Hu Quan now had the mentality of a winner in life. Hu Quan was only short of a high-quality bronze fei to become a Class 5 spirit craftsman. What else could be more comforting than realizing one's ultimate goal in middle age? Lin Yuan looked at Hu Quan's excited expression and said, "That's right. Uncle Hu, looks like you'll have to make a trip to the Spirit Craftsman Chamber of Commerce tomorrow." Hu Quan was a little confused by Lin Yuan's words and did not understand what he meant at all. Just as Hu Quan was about to ask, he heard Lin Yuan speak again. "I've got the wood weaving house centipede that Uncle Hu told you about before." When Hu Quan heard that, his face was full of surprise, and his eyes lit up. His entire body was filled with anticipation. When Listen saw Hu Quan's expression, he knew that the wood weaving house centipede would not be of low quality. Listen, who was listening to the conversation between Lin Yuan and Hu Quan, heard the Spirit Craftsman Association's ritual. He knew that this uncle with a sloppy beard was a Spirit Craftsman Grandmaster who was about to become a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman. For a Spirit Craftsman Grandmaster to look forward to the wood weaving house centipede, it had to be at least a bronze flawless wood weaving house centipede. Listen thought of Lin Yuan's means again and thought, it's the wood weaving house centipede that made this uncle with a sloppy beard look forward to it so much. Could it be an epic wood weaving house centipede? He waved his hand and summoned the bronze legend wood weaving house centipede from the spirit lock spatial zone. A 30-centimeter long, dark green insect species fei appeared on the completely jade-textured table. The wood weaving house centipede that Lin Yuan had chosen was very lively and active. Therefore, when it was summoned, it started to hide with Lin Yuan and the others on the completely jade-textured table. He held the bronze X legend wood weaving house centipede in his hand. Otherwise, he would really be afraid that this little thing would take a bite of the completely jade-textured table. Listen only saw this 30-centimeter long, dark green insect species fei for a moment, and his eyes were completely attracted to it. Listen's mind was filled with the thought that Lin Yuan had actually taken out a bronze legend fei. Listen didn't expect that he would be lucky enough to see something that only existed in legends. It was something that would only appear when a pinnacle class 4 creation master was overflowing with luck. It was just that this kind of situation was too rare. In a sense, this bronze legend fei was equivalent to a class 5 creation master's privilege. A bronze legend fei was something that even pinnacle king class experts could only dream of. Now, Lin Yuan had casually summoned it. This made Listen understand that he had completely underestimated the foundation of this sunny youth in front of him. At that moment, Hu Quan suddenly exclaimed, "Ah!" His voice was full of obsession and surprise. "Oh my God! This bronze legend wood weaving house centipede's silk sac actually split." Lin Yuan nodded and said, "That's right. Uncle Hu's luck is really good." Hu Quan's originally ecstatic grin stretched all the way to his ears. However, after hearing Lin Yuan's words, the corners of his mouth that reached his ears could not help but twitch, and Hu Quan's jaw almost turned over. If this wood-weaving house centipede had not been given to him by Lin Yuan, Hu Quan would have asked Lin Yuan righteously if this was something a human would say. "Don't you know if my luck is good or if you gave it to me well?" In fact, in addition to Hu Quan's surging emotions because of happiness, Lisan's emotions were also surging. Lisan had always felt that he was very lucky to be able to rely on a big tree. However, he now found that his back was not leaning on a big tree at all, but a deep forest with no visible borders. Lisan was a smart and relatively deep person. He had always had a clear understanding of himself and knew where his talent was. Lisan had always thought that he was good at communicating with others. However, such a talent could only be displayed to the fullest with strong support from the rear. The stronger the support from the rear, the better Lisan's ability to deal with the outside world could be displayed. Now, he had a backer who could take out a bronze legend Fey. Lisan felt that he could finally put his talents to good use. Hu Quan took the bronze legend wood weaving house centipede from Lin Yuan and carefully observed its split silk sack. After looking at it for a long time, Hu Quan carefully stored the bronze legend wood weaving house centipede's silk sack into his diamond Fey storage box. Then he laughed and said to Lin Yuan, "I can't thank you enough. Lin Yuan, I'll go contract this wood weaving house centipede in a while. After I become a class 5 spirit craftsman, no matter what you want me to do, just say the word. My liver is good." Lin Yuan said with a smile. "Okay, I really have a lot of things to trouble Uncle Hu at that time." Lisan had been listening to Lin Yuan and Hu Quan's conversation. Observing people's words and body language was his most basic instinct. Lisan had always thought that the person Lin Yuan called Uncle Hu was Lin Yuan's elder, but he did not expect him to have a similar status to him. Even if his status was higher than his, there was not much difference in nature. This discovery made Lisan think of the bronze legend wood weaving house centipede that Lin Yuan had casually given out. This made Lisan have to re-evaluate Lin Yuan's foundation for the third time since he entered the house. Although Lisan thought a lot, he also wanted to understand a little more about Lin Yuan. After all, he would have to live under Lin Yuan's hands for the rest of his life. Hu Quan was going to return to his room to contract the bronze legend wood weaving house centipede. Then, he would let it fuse with the willpower rune he had comprehended into a fantasy breed Fey. Hu Quan suddenly thought of something and said, "Lin Yuan, do you not have a flying mount ready yet? Lin Yuan, do you still not have a flying mount ready?" Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Clawbook House for free. Chapter 369. It had been some time since Hu Quan arrived at the mansion. However, during this time, he found that Lin Yuan mostly used his cell phone to book flying Feys. It seemed that Lin Yuan did not have a flying Fey yet. After hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan touched the back of his head and said, "Uncle Hu, I really don't have a flying Fey ready to go out." After hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan touched the back of his head and said, "Uncle Hu, I really don't have a flying Fey ready to go out." The little grey fellow in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone was a crane species Fey. Even though most crane species Feys were good at flying, not all of them could fly. For example, the crane species ostrich Feys were not good at flying. They could only fly a few dozen meters away when flapping their wings. However, their movements were abnormally fast and had extraordinary strength. Their claws could easily grab and pierce through metal spiritual materials that were higher than their own grade. That little grey fellow's genetic model had yet to fully appear. Lin Yuan could not be sure if this little grey fellow was good at flying. At that time, Lin Yuan had decided to raise this grey little fellow, but he had not decided to use it as a flying mount. When Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan's words, his eyes immediately lit up. "Lin Yuan, when I contract the bronze legend wood weaving house centipede and let it become a fantasy breed, I'm confident I can build a Fey carriage made mainly of jade-textured wood." When Hu Quan said this, he rubbed his hands and chuckled. He obviously wanted to use the completely jade-textured wood to make a big item. When Hu Quan saw Lin Yuan's thoughtful expression, he continued to speak. With the fantasy breed wood weaving house centipede's split spinnerets, I can use jade-textured wood to create all kinds of precise machinery. Mixed with some high-grade metals, the Fey carriage can have very strong defense, and the interior can be very comfortable. Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan nodded in agreement. Lin Yuan felt that Hu Quan's suggestion was very good. As long as Lin Yuan was not in a hurry, he did not want to experience the feeling of sitting on the divine travel black swallow's buttocks. After sitting for a long time, it felt like 30 wet nurse Rome were poking your buttocks with needles. It was too painful. The Fey carriage did not refer to the kind of carriage that could be driven by itself before the spirit chi awakening. Instead, it had to be pulled by a Fey in front, a bit similar to the carriage in Lin Yuan's previous life. However, the Fey carriage's carriage was much bigger than the carriage's. Fey carriages could travel on land, water, and air depending on the Fey pulling them. However, most of the Fey carriages would choose flying-type Feys with defensive abilities to pull the carriages. A Fey carriage would generally have more than 3 flying-type Feys pulling it. If every flying-type Fey pulling the Fey carriage had a defensive ability, then apart from the carriage's own defensive ability, it would be able to protect the carriage. These flying Feys that were pulling the carriage could also effectively protect the carriage. Even if Fey carriages had thousands of benefits, most spirit chi professionals wouldn't choose to forge one. After all, the resources required to create a Fey carriage were just too much. Building a Fey carriage was far less cost-effective than nurturing a flying Fey for transportation. Therefore, Fey carriages were something that only veteran factions with deep foundations would consider building. It was undeniable that the Fey carriage wasn't just sturdy, but it also had great defensive capabilities. Furthermore, the interior of the carriage could be decorated to be exceptionally comfortable. Hu Quan had put forward such an opinion because he felt that Lin Yuan's foundation was enough to build a high-end Fey carriage. After all, Lin Yuan's foundation could obtain a bronze legend wood weaving house centipede in just 10 days. With such ability, it would be easy to build a high-end Fey carriage. Hu Quan's proposal to build a Fey carriage was actually to repay Lin Yuan. Creating a high-end Fey carriage was not a small project. Even if Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman, kept working like this, it would take at least more than 2 months to be able to use the craftsman's spirit to carve a Fey carriage. He wanted to find a Class 5 spirit craftsman to spend 2 months to build a Fey carriage. This was not something that could be done with money. Even a veteran faction would have to promise enough benefits, and they would also have to pay a favor. They even had to help a Class 5 spirit craftsman find some precious materials as a reward to be able to invite a Class 5 spirit craftsman. A new batch of completely jade-textured wood in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone was about to mature. He could obtain 20 wooden planks of completely jade-textured wood in one go. These 20 wooden planks of completely jade-textured wood were more than enough to make the main bottom of a Fey carriage. If Lin Yuan wanted to build a Fey carriage, what he lacked was not the materials to build the Fey carriage. What he lacked was the flying Fey that pulled the carriage. Lin Yuan had always been different from ordinary creation masters. He could easily enhance bronze epic Feys and even bronze legend Feys. However, he had no way of dealing with high-grade Feys. Given Lin Yuan's current standard as a C-rank spirit chi professional, he could only enhance a gold Fey at most. Even if he used Morbius spirit chi condensation to condense crystals. At most, he could raise the Fey's grade to platinum. However, as long as Lin Yuan was not crazy, he would never use spirit chi crystals to enhance the flying Fey that pulled the Fey carriage. Although he could condense 1 spirit chi crystal every 7 days or so, it was still a scarce resource for him. Lin Yuan still had to use the spirit chi crystals to increase his Fey's strength. Secondly, even if he didn't need to increase his Fey's strength, he wouldn't be able to do so. In that case, wouldn't it be better to use the spirit power crystals to enhance bronze legend Feys? Just as Lin Yuan was about to speak, clear laughter suddenly echoed from the mansion's entrance. When Lin Yuan heard this clear laughter, his eyes lit up because he already knew who it was. Lin Yuan said to Hu Quan, "Uncle Hu, put aside the Fey carriage first. I don't have any flying Feys that are suitable to pull the Fey carriage yet." Then, he turned and walked toward the door. Sure enough, When he turned around, he saw the mansion's entrance. A man who wore a silver robe almost all year round stood there. This man was Xian Yu. Lin Yuan said hurriedly, "Uncle Xian, why didn't you inform me that you were coming so late? I would have gone to the entrance of the manor to pick you up." Xian Yu looked at Lin Yuan with a clear smile and said, "It's not early winter. If I told you in advance that I was coming, you would have to go to the manor to pick me up. You would have to stand in the cold wind for nothing. Why don't I come in directly and bring you the things your master brought for you?" Xian Yu had heard the conversation between Hu Quan and Lin Yuan when he entered the mansion. When he heard that Lin Yuan did not have any flying fays that were suitable to pull the fey carriage, Xian Yu secretly remembered Lin Yuan's words. Mystic Moon secretly remembered Lin Yuan's words and planned to tell the Moon Empress after returning to the Radiant Moon Palace. He thought about how the Moon Empress was always in a daze in the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace. He was thinking about what gift he should give his disciple but could not think of anything suitable. Wasn't this a good opportunity now? Make up for yesterday's third update. End of this chapter. Chapter 370. This wasn't the first time Mystic Moon had visited Lin Yuan's residence. Even though Xian Yu wouldn't come here every few days, Xian Yu was a little worried. However, he would always come here once every half a month, so he was already very familiar with the place. However, Hu Quan had been sleeping during the day and working hard at night. In the past, Xian Yu would usually come over in the morning. Therefore, this was the first time Hu Quan had seen Mystic Moon with his own eyes. The two moon envoys of the Radiant Moon Palace were famous throughout the world. Emissary Tsungyue was in charge of external affairs, while Emissary Xian Yu was in charge of internal affairs. That was why Mount Hueyue's Tsungyue emissary's reputation was well known. But regarding the Black Moon envoys, those without strength and status knew very little. Only the Radiance Federation's top factions were qualified to know a thing or two. Therefore, Hu Quan did not recognize Xian Yu. However, when Hu Quan saw the silver robe, he seemed to vaguely recall a rumor. It was just that Hu Quan couldn't recall this rumor at the moment. On the other hand, Listen could tell that Mystic Moon and Lin Yuan had a close relationship. Lin Yuan had previously addressed Hu Quan as uncle who mainly because of Hu Quan's age, and it was a polite form of address. Now that Lin Yuan was addressing this silver-robed man as Uncle Mystic, even if they weren't related by blood, he was still an uncle on the level of family. Otherwise, this silver-robed man wouldn't have given Lin Yuan something on behalf of his master. Lin Yuan quickly picked up the teacup from the table and poured a cup of 3 treasures tea for Mystic Moon. "Uncle Xian, have a cup of tea first." Mystic Moon took the teacup that Lin Yuan handed over and took a sniff before speaking in a clear voice. "Little Yuan, there are plums in this 3 treasures tea. It smells good." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan chuckled and said, "That's right. This was brewed by Wen Yu. She added the plums that Uncle Xian sent over last time." Xian Yu said as soon as she heard that Wen Yu was the one who made it. Wen Yu went out to train, Wen Yu and Caicha learned the way of tea for a few days. "I heard from Caicha that Wen Yu learned it pretty well." Xian Yu's words were filled with praise for Wen Yu. Clearly, she thought very highly of Wen Yu. As the moon envoy of the Leaning Moon Mountain's Radiant Moon Palace, Mystic Moon was the Moon Empress envoy. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the Radiant Moon Palace's chief steward. Wen Yu was just a small spirit attendant in the Radiant Moon Palace, so it was impossible for Xian Yu to take notice of her. Ever since Lin Yuan had chosen Wen Yu as his assistant, she had finally appeared in Mystic Moon's line of sight. Xian Yu also came into contact with Wen Yu. In the beginning, Mystic Moon had advocated for sending 2 spirit attendants to be Lin Yuan's assistants. In the matter of building the manor, Wen Yu had done an excellent job on her own. This allowed Mystic Moon to see Wen Yu's strong ability to handle matters, which dispelled her intention of telling Lin Yuan about her proposal. However, Mystic Moon had truly thought highly of Wen Yu when Lin Yuan had gone out to train. Back then, Wen Yu had gone to the Radiant Moon Palace to look for the Moon Empress to become stronger, and the Moon Empress had given Wen Yu some pointers regarding the Creation Master's abilities. Therefore, he threw Wen Yu to Mystic Moon and asked her to bring her to understand the Radiance Federation's major factions. In the beginning, Mystic Moon only listened to the Moon Empress orders and guided Wen Yu. However, the more Xian Yu guided Wen Yu, the more she discovered that Wen Yu's strategy far exceeded that of an ordinary person. This allowed Mystic Moon to see Wen Yu's true brilliance apart from being a spirit chi professional and a creation master. As the Radiant Moon Palace Master's Moon Envoy, Mystic Moon could not help but sigh at Wen Yu's strong strategy in terms of faction understanding and resource allocation. In the past, when Wen Yu had been a spirit attendant, she had not had the chance to display these talents. Now that Wen Yu was standing in the position of Lin Yuan's assistant, she had the opportunity to display her talents. After Mystic Moon discovered Wen Yu's talent in this area, she had carefully taught Wen Yu for a month. This was why when Wen Yu had returned to the manor to play the Fey Battle Flag game, she had been able to monopolize the 5 factions' resources and make Lin Yuan raise his eyebrows. After Mystic Moon finished the tea in the cup, she placed the teacup on the table. Then, she waved her hand and took out a small square box made of beeswax. Mystic Moon handed the small square box to Lin Yuan and said, "This is a small thing your master made for you. This is a small thing your master made for you." Lin Yuan took the small square box and realized that Mystic Moon had the intention to leave, so he said, "Uncle Mystic Moon, sit here for a while. Uncle Xian, sit here for a while. I'll go wash some fruits for you." After saying that, Lin Yuan walked toward the kitchen and did not give Mystic Moon any chance to refuse. When Mystic Moon saw Lin Yuan like this, she could not help but laugh. Usually, Mystic Moon always felt that Lin Yuan was very capable and did not look like an 18 or 19-year-old youth at all. However, Lin Yuan's childish behavior had let Mystic Moon know. Lin Yuan had really treated her as a family member. Of course, when Lin Yuan called him Uncle Mystic Moon outside the Radiant Moon Palace, Mystic Moon felt it in her heart. It was also from that moment on that Mystic Moon treated Lin Yuan as the young lord of the Radiant Moon Palace and her young master. Mystic Moon also treated Lin Yuan as her junior, her nephew. After Lin Yuan went to wash the fruits, only Mystic Moon, Hu Quan, and Listen were left in the huge living room. Mystic Moon glanced at Hu Quan and Listen and said, "Let's sit together for a while." Hu Quan and Listen were a little reserved when they saw Mystic Moon. It was not just because Mystic Moon was Lin Yuan's uncle. It was also because of Mystic Moon's clear and noble bearing. This kind of bearing was simply too transcendent. It was simply not something that ordinary people could have. When Mystic Moon heard Hu Quan and Lin Yuan's conversation, he heard Hu Quan say that he was a Class 5 spirit craftsman. Therefore, when he looked at Hu Quan, he could not help but think highly of him. When Mystic Moon heard Hu Quan say that he wanted to build a Fey carriage, he could not help but ask, "What kind of materials do you think are suitable for the construction of the Fey carriage?" Hu Quan was a little surprised. Why would this silver-robed man in front of him ask him such a question? However, since he had been asked, Hu Quan answered truthfully, "I think it's best to use completely jade-textured wood for the main body of the Fey carriage, paired with some rare metals." After listening to Hu Quan's idea, Mystic Moon nodded with admiration. The combination of completely jade-textured wood and rare metals was indeed very suitable to make a Fey carriage. It was not tacky, nor did it look very shabby. It was just a little worse than the coral stones shed from the suzerain gem coral. Then Mystic Moon asked again, "Then how many flying Fays do you think are suitable to pull the Fey carriage?" Hu Quan thought for a moment and replied, "Actually, 3 flying Fays are enough. Actually, 3 flying Fays are enough. If the conditions allow it, it would be best to have 5. If the conditions don't allow it, 1 is actually not bad." Hu Quan was still thinking about making a Fey carriage. On one hand, Hu Quan wanted to make this Fey carriage because he was about to become a Class 5 spirit craftsman. He wanted to make an item that could represent his peak achievement after he became a Class 5 spirit craftsman. On the other hand, Hu Quan also wanted to repay Lin Yuan and contribute more to him. However, these words did not sound the same to Mystic Moon's ears. Mystic Moon almost thought that she had heard wrongly just now. Was this still the Class 5 spirit craftsman who had just said that he wanted to use completely jade-textured wood and rare metals to make a carriage? Mystic Moon really wanted to pry open Hu Quan's head and take a look inside. How poor and shabby had he been in the first half of his life? Only then could a Class 5 spirit craftsman say that a flying fae could pull a fae carriage. If only one flying fae was used to pull a fae carriage, what was the point of the fae carriage? Wasn't such a fae carriage just an urn that could not move a few hundred meters in the sky? Today's first chapter end of this chapter. Chapter 371. In Mystic Moon's opinion, Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple. There had to be at least 9 faes used to pull the fae carriage. If Lin Yuan liked more faes, it wouldn't be too much to ask for 12. Using multiple flying faes to pull the carriage might not increase the carriage's flying speed. However, if these flying faes that were pulling the chariot had defensive abilities, they would not be able to escape. The more flying faes there were, the safer the carriage could be. Mystic Moon looked at Hu Quan's expression. She realized that Hu Quan's expression was actually quite serious. Mystic Moon cleared her throat and asked, "Then, how many faes do you think are more suitable?" Mystic Moon's question piqued Hu Quan's interest. Hu Quan replied without thinking, "If you want to show style, then the higher and rarer the fae, the better. If you want to show style, it is naturally better to use the rarer and higher grade faes to pull the chariot. There is no need to be so particular about the species of faes." Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Mystic Moon had no intention of continuing to communicate with Hu Quan. If the fae pulling the carriage wanted to show its foundation, then it had to make the flying faes look uniform when flying. Otherwise, if there were as many flying faes pulling the carriage as there were different kinds of flying faes, wouldn't it be a shameless meeting and a mess? Therefore, it was best to only have one kind of fae pulling the carriage. This could ensure that the same kind of fae had the same flying speed. On the other hand, it could also ensure that there would be no friction between the same kind of high-grade faes during flight. It was impossible for the fae carriage's owner to contract all the faes that were pulling the carriage. Since there were no contracted faes, the owner's control would be much weaker. Weak control, in addition, if there were some natural enemies between the two kinds of faes. If there were friction between the two kinds of faes in the sky, it would not cause any serious consequences even if they had been trained by creation masters. However, it was also very troublesome to appease the fae that had friction. Moreover, as long as a precious fae was pulling the carriage, it could show style. Let's get a high-grade flying turtle fae and a high-grade flying snake fae and put them together. What if you pretend to be a black tortoise in the sky? You're still telling others that I should give your fae carriage 10 points. It was simply too unsophisticated. After hearing Hu Quan's words, Mystic Moon was even more determined to tell the Moon Empress about the lack of suitable flying faes for the fae carriage. At the same time, Mystic Moon was a little worried. If Lin Yuan were to be together with such a Class 5 spirit craftsman, would he be brought down by such a person? This was indeed a question worth pondering. Hu Quan was still immersed in the beautiful thought of building a fae carriage. However, he did not know that Xian Yu had already labeled him as a country bumpkin. In fact, if Hu Quan knew about it, he would definitely cry out an injustice. Hu Quan was just from a grassroots background, yet he dared to say that he would use completely jade-textured wood and rare metals to build the main body of the fae carriage. It was because Hu Quan knew that Lin Yuan had these spiritual ingredients. If it wasn't for the fact that he had broadened his horizons during this period of time with Lin Yuan, he wouldn't have been able to do so. Hu Quan had never dared to think about something like a fae carriage. Hu Quan was not to be blamed. If Hu Quan really became a Class 5 spirit craftsman, after Hu Quan's status and level increased, his horizons naturally increased as well. Mystic Moon turned to look at Listen and chatted with him for a while. Xian Yu keenly discovered that Listen's talent in diplomacy didn't lose to Wen-Yu's talent in strategy. In this way, Lin Yuan actually had a helper who could manage both internal and external matters. Just like him and Kang Yu, who were beside the Moon Empress. If Cold Moon and Listen's external talents were likened to support-type spirit chi professionals, thus, Cold Moon's method of support was to kill everything that could threaten her team. Using this kind of hardcore method to support. Listening was equivalent to turning all enemies hostile to his team into his own people. He was using this soft-core method to assist. There were pros and cons to this type of support. However, Listen was still young and had time to grow. After Lin Yuan washed the fruits, he cut them into pieces that were suitable for eating. Then, he placed a fruit platter and placed a few fruit forks on it before bringing it out. After chatting with Mystic Moon for a while, Mystic Moon left. Only Lin Yuan, Listen, and Hu Quan were left in the living room. Lin Yuan said with a serious expression, "Listen, your listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is still operating as usual." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen nodded and replied seriously, "Young master, I brought 11 source-type items this time. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and I have pledged allegiance to you, so these source-type items are yours, young master." Lin Yuan said with a wave of his hand, "I'll still take 6 source-type items according to the previous remuneration. The remaining 5 source-type items will be the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's current resources. Do you want the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to maintain its current state?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen immediately expressed his stance. "No, I want the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to develop into a big chamber of commerce." Upon hearing Listen's words, Lin Yuan shook his head. Listen's diplomatic talents were outstanding. However, since Listen had been staying in the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, the layout was still a little too small. Listen needed some guidance to understand that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce could become more than just a large chamber of commerce. Or rather, Listen shouldn't just focus on the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce itself. "Since you and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce have submitted to me, I will inject the first resource into the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and provide you with the same goods." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen knew that Lin Yuan had not finished speaking. At the same time, he was curious about what exactly the goods that Lin Yuan was talking about were. At that moment, Lin Yuan turned to look at Hu Quan. "Uncle Hu, after you become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, go find a construction team and let them build the Guild Club's base in the open space behind the manor." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan replied, "Don't worry, Lin Yuan. After I become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, as long as I say the word, there will be construction teams rushing to build the Guild Club's base for us." At that moment, Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan say, "Don't worry, Lin Yuan. Uncle Hu, the powder of the completely jade-textured wood that we've collected previously can now be used." As soon as Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan's words, he understood what he meant. Completely jade-textured wood was so rare that only people with some foundation could not afford it at all. Therefore, those ornaments mixed with completely jade-textured wood powder and utensils made of completely jade-textured wood powder as glaze. They became luxuries sought after by those who did not have a deep foundation in the Radiance Federation. Any one of them could be sold for a high price of nearly 10,000 Radiance dollars. In Hu Quan's opinion, the resources that Lin Yuan had said he would inject into the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce should be these objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder. Hu Quan could not help but sigh. In this return from faraway manor, it seemed that everything was different from the outside world. Things that were hard to find in the outside world were treated as garbage in this return from faraway manor and could only gather dust in the warehouse. Listen was a smart person. From the conversation between Lin Yuan and Hu Quan, he knew what resources Lin Yuan was going to inject into him. Yesterday's second update. End of this chapter.